Third part. You look upward when you long for exaltation, and I look downward because I am exalted. Who among you can laugh and be exalted at the same time? He who climbs the highest mountains laughs at all tragic plays and tragic realities. Zarathustra, I, Reading and Writing. Chapter 45. The Wanderer. Then, when it was about midnight, Zarathustra continued his journey over the ridge of the island, aiming to arrive early in the morning on the other side where he intended to embark. There was a good harbour there where foreign ships often anchored, carrying many people who wanted to cross from the Happy Isles. As Zarathustra ascended the mountain, he reflected on the numerous solitary wanderings he had undertaken since his youth, climbing many mountains, ridges and summits. I am a wanderer and a mountain climber, he said to himself. I do not love the plains, and it seems I cannot sit still for long. And whatever fate and experience may still bring to me, it will involve wandering and mountain climbing. In the end, one only experiences oneself. The time has passed when accidents could befall me, and what could now happen to me that is not already a part of me? It returns, and it comes home to me at last, my own self and everything that has been scattered among things and experiences. One thing I know for certain, he continued, I stand now before my last summit, and the greatest challenge that has been reserved for me. Ah, my hardest path lies ahead. I have begun my loneliest journey. But he who shares my nature does not shy away from such moments. It is the moment that tells him, now, you are on the path to greatness. Summit and abyss are now one. This is the path to greatness. It must be my greatest courage, for there is no longer a path behind me. No one shall follow me, for my foot has erased the path, and over it is written, Impossibility. If all ladders fail me now, he contemplated, then I must learn to ascend on my own head. How else could I ascend? On my own head, and beyond my own heart. I must become harder, for he who has indulged himself too much eventually sickens of it. I do not praise the land where butter and honey flow. To learn to look away from oneself is necessary to see many things. Every mountain climber needs this hardiness. Those who are too intrusive with their discerning eyes can never see beyond the foreground. But I, Zarathustra, wish to see the foundation and the background of everything. I must climb above myself, upward, until even the stars are beneath me. I have recognized my destiny, Zarathustra concluded sadly, and I am prepared. My last solitude has begun. Ah, this dark, sad sea below me. Ah, this somber, nocturnal annoyance. Ah, fate and sea, I must descend to you now. Before my highest mountain I stand, and before my longest journey. I must go deeper down than I have ever ascended, even into the darkest flood of pain. This is what my fate demands, and I am ready. Where do the highest mountains come from? He mused. I once asked this question and learned that they emerge from the sea. Their stones and summit walls bear witness to this origin. The highest must rise from the deepest. Thus spoke Zarathustra on the mountain ridge where it was cold. But when he approached the sea and stood alone among the cliffs, he felt weariness and eagerness he had never felt before. Everything still sleeps, he observed. Even the sea sleeps. It gazes upon me drowsily and strangely, but it breathes warmly. I feel it, and I feel that it dreams. It dreams restlessly on hard pillows. Listen, listen. It groans with evil memories or evil expectations. Ah, I am sad along with you, you dusky monster, and I am angry with myself for your sake. Ah, my hand is not strong enough. I would gladly free you from your evil dreams. While Zarathustra spoke, he laughed at himself with melancholy and bitterness. What, Zarathustra, he said to himself, will you sing consolation even to the sea? Ah, you amiable fool, Zarathustra, you too blindly trusting one. But this is how you have always been. You have approached everything with confidence, even the terrible. You would caress every monster, a gentle touch, a soft tuft on its paw, and you were ready to love and entice it. Love is the danger of the loneliest one, love for anything that lives. How laughable is my folly and modesty in love. Thus spoke Zarathustra, and laughed for the second time. But then he thought of his abandoned friends, and as if he had wronged them with his thoughts, he reproached himself because of them. And immediately he began to weep, laughing and weeping with anger and longing. In chapter 45, Zarathustra is portrayed as a solitary wanderer, moving through mountainous terrain, symbolizing his journey of self-discovery and personal transformation. This wandering is not a mindless drifting, but an intentional search for higher understanding, reflecting Nietzsche's belief that solitude is essential for self-overcoming. By distancing himself from society, Zarathustra can confront his own thoughts, desires, and fears without the distractions of conventional beliefs. The imagery of mountains and peaks is central here, representing Zarathustra's striving toward higher states of being. Climbing symbolizes the struggle for self-knowledge, where each ascent involves pain, doubt, and moments of clarity. Nietzsche uses this metaphor to show that true wisdom is achieved through enduring hardship and continuous effort. A key theme in this chapter is the tension between solitude and engagement. While Zarathustra's isolation gives him strength and insight, it also makes him an outsider, free but alone. Nietzsche's wanderer is both liberated and exiled, embodying the paradox of freedom. Real independence often comes at the cost of alienation. Yet Zarathustra's wandering isn't a rejection of humanity, but a preparation to return with newfound wisdom. The chapter emphasizes that genuine growth requires cycles of departure and return, periods of separation to develop one's unique path, and a re-engagement to share it. Suffering plays a significant role in Zarathustra's journey. Nietzsche views pain as a prerequisite for transformation, with Zarathustra's wounds symbolizing the cost of self-knowledge. These trials are necessary for forging the strength to ascend to higher truths. This chapter illustrates the idea that self-overcoming is not a single achievement, but an ongoing process, where each challenge brings new insights and greater mastery over oneself. Ultimately, The Wanderer is about the courage required to walk one's own path, confronting isolation, doubt, and the paradoxes of freedom. Through Zarathustra, Nietzsche calls on us to embrace the solitary journey, enduring its hardships and finding strength in our willingness to wander toward greater self-understanding. Chapter 46, The Vision and the Enigma, Zarathustra's Revelation, the Vision of the Lonesomest One. When it got abroad among the sailors that Zarathustra was on board the ship, for a man who came from the Happy Isles had gone on board along with him, there was great curiosity and expectation. But Zarathustra kept silent for 2 days, and was cold and deaf with sadness, so that he neither answered looks nor questions. On the evening of the 2nd day, however, he again opened his ears, though he still kept silent, for there were many curious and dangerous things to be heard on board the ship, which came from afar, and was to go still further. Zarathustra, however, was fond of all those who make distant voyages, and disliked to live without danger. And behold, when listening, his own tongue was at last loosened, and the ice of his heart broke. Then did he begin to speak thus, to you, the daring venturers and adventurers, and whoever hath embarked with cunning sails upon frightful seas, to you the enigma intoxicated, the twilight enjoyers, whose souls are allured by flutes to every treacherous gulf. For ye dislike to grope at a thread with cowardly hand, and where ye can divine, there do ye hate to calculate. To you only do I tell the enigma that I saw, the vision of the lonesomest one. Gloomily walked I lately in corpse-coloured twilight, gloomily and sternly with compressed lips. Not only one sun had set for me, a path which ascended daringly among boulders, an evil, lonesome path, which neither herb nor shrub any longer cheered, a mountain path, crunched under the daring of my foot. Mutely marching over the scornful clinking of pebbles, trampling the stone that let it slip, thus did my foot force its way upwards, in spite of the spirit that drew it downwards, towards the abyss, the spirit of gravity, my devil and arch-enemy. Upwards, although it sat upon me, half dwarf, half mole, paralyzing, dripping lead in my ear, and thoughts like drops of lead into my brain. "O Zarathustra," it whispered scornfully, syllable by syllable, "your stone of wisdom! You threw yourself high, but every thrown stone must fall. O Zarathustra, your stone of wisdom, your slingstone, your star-destroyer, you throw yourself so high, but every thrown stone must fall. Condemned of yourself, and to your own stoning, O Zarathustra, you throw your stone far, but upon yourself it will recoil." Then was the dwarf silent, and it lasted long. The silence, however, oppressed me, and to be thus in pairs, one is verily lonesomer than when alone. I ascended, I dreamt, I thought, but everything oppressed me. A sick one did I resemble, whom was bad torture, and a worse dream reawakened out of his first sleep. But there is something in me which I call courage. Until now, it has slain for me every low spirit. This courage at last bade me stand still and say, Dwarf, you or I. For courage is the best slayer, courage which attacks, for in every attack there is sound of triumph. Man, however, is the most courageous animal. Thereby has he overcome every animal. With sound of triumph has he overcome every pain. Human pain, however, is the sorest pain. Courage slays also giddiness at abysses. And where does man not stand at abysses? Is not seeing itself seeing abysses? Courage is the best slayer. Courage also slays fellow suffering. Fellow suffering, however, is the deepest abyss. As deeply as man looks into life, so deeply also does he look into suffering. Courage, however, is the best slayer, courage which attacks. It slays even death itself, for it says, Was that life? Well, once more. In such speech, however, there is much sound of triumph. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. The enigmatic parable, a shepherd's transformation. Hold on, dwarf, I said, either I or you, but I am the stronger of the two. You don't know the depths of my thoughts. It's something you couldn't handle. Then something happened that lightened my mood. The dwarf jumped off my shoulder, the curious little spirit. It landed on a rock in front of me. We had come to a stop near a gateway. Look at this gateway, dwarf, I continued. It has two faces. Two paths converge here, and no one has reached the end of either. One path stretches back for an eternity, and the other extends forward, also for an eternity. These paths are opposites, and yet they meet at this gateway. It's named This Moment. But if we were to follow them further, do you think, dwarf, that these paths would always remain opposites? Everything's straight lies, muttered the dwarf with disdain. All truth is crooked, and time itself is a circle. You spirit of gravity, I exclaimed angrily, don't take this lightly, or I'll let you sit there, Holtfoot, and I carried you high. Look, I went on, at this moment, from the gateway called This Moment, there's a long eternal path backward. An eternity lies behind us. Haven't all possible events already occurred along that path? Haven't all that can happen already happened, had its consequences, and passed by? And if everything has already existed, what do you think, dwarf, about this moment? Hasn't this gateway existed as well? Aren't all things interconnected in such a way that this moment drags all future events with it, including itself? For if everything can happen, then even this long path forward, must it not happen again and again? Thus did I speak, growing softer, for I was afraid of my own thoughts and my backlog of thoughts. Suddenly I heard a dog howl nearby. Had I ever heard a dog howl like that before? Memories flooded back. Yes, when I was a child, in the most distant recesses of my childhood, I had heard a dog howl like that. I had seen it too, with its hair standing on end, head raised, trembling in the quietest midnight, when even dogs believe in ghosts. It filled me with pity then, for the full moon was passing overhead, silent as death, casting a bright glow over the house, seemingly resting on the flat roof like it belonged there. The dog had been terrified, as dogs believe in thieves and ghosts, and when I heard that howling again, it stirred my pity once more. Where was the dwarf now, and the gateway, and the spider, and all the whispering? Had I dreamt it all? Had I awakened? I stood alone among rugged rocks in the dreariest moonlight, but there lay a man, and there, a dog leaping, hair standing on end, whining. Now it saw me approaching and howled again, crying out for help like I had never heard a dog cry before. What I saw then, I had never seen the like of before. I saw a young shepherd, writhing, choking, quivering, with a contorted face and a heavy black serpent hanging out of his mouth. Had I ever seen such loathing and pale horror on someone's face? Perhaps he had fallen asleep, and the serpent had crawled into his throat, then bitten and fastened itself there. I tried to pull the serpent out of his throat with my hand, but in vain. It wouldn't budge. Then I cried out, "Bite! Bite its head off!" My horror, hatred, loathing, pity, all my good and bad cried out in unison. You brave souls around me, you adventurers and venturers, those of you who have set sail on uncharted seas with cunning sails, you lovers of enigmas. Explain to me the riddle I witnessed, interpret the vision of the loneliest one. It was a vision and a premonition. What did I see in that parable? Who is destined to come one day? Who is the shepherd into whose throat the serpent crawled? Who is the man into whose throat all the heaviest and darkest things will crawl? The shepherd bit as my cry had urged him. He bit with all his might and spat out the serpent's head, then jumped up. No longer a shepherd, no longer a man, but a transformed being, bathed in light, and he laughed. I had never heard a human laugh like that before. Oh, my brothers, I heard laughter that was not human laughter, and now an unquenchable thirst and longing gnaw at me. My longing for that laughter gnaws at me. How can I still bear to live, and how can I bear to die now? Thus spoke Zarathustra. In this chapter, Zarathustra recounts a symbolic vision that encapsulates Nietzsche's philosophy of eternal recurrence and the struggle against despair. Zarathustra stands at a gateway where two paths meet, one stretching into the past and the other into the future. Here, a dwarf perches on his shoulder, mocking him and representing the weight of cynicism. Zarathustra envisions time as a spiral where every moment endlessly repeats itself. The dwarf dismisses this as a path that goes nowhere, reflecting the human tendency to see life as a cycle of futility. Zarathustra, however, views it as a profound challenge. To fully embrace life, one must accept that everything will recur, joy and suffering alike. The second part of the chapter presents an enigma. Zarathustra sees a shepherd choking on a serpent stuck in his throat. This image symbolizes the agony of internal despair, where suffering threatens to consume the self. Unable to speak or breathe, the shepherd eventually bites off the serpent's head and spits it out, followed by a burst of liberating laughter. The serpent represents the forces of nihilism and inner torment, while the shepherd's defiant act signifies overcoming despair through a powerful assertion of the will. His laughter is not mere relief, but a triumphant acceptance of life's struggles, turning suffering into a source of strength. Ultimately, the chapter's message is that to live fully, one must confront suffering head-on and transform it, affirming even the harshest aspects of existence. Nietzsche's vision of eternal recurrence challenges us to embrace every moment, knowing that each will repeat eternally, and to do so with the courage to laugh in the face of despair. Through this vision and enigma, Zarathustra symbolizes the human capacity to turn pain into power and find joy in the affirmation of life itself. Chapter 47. Involuntary Bliss. With such mysteries and bitterness in his heart, Zarathustra sailed over the sea. But when he was 4 days' journey away from the Happy Isles and his friends, he had overcome all his pain. Triumphantly, and with a firm step, he once again embraced his destiny. Then Zarathustra spoke to his exulting conscience in this manner. I am alone once again, and it seems I will remain so, alone under the pure sky and the open sea. The afternoon surrounds me once more. It was on an afternoon that I first met my friends, and it was on another afternoon that I found them again, at the hour when all light grows quieter. For whatever happiness is on its way between heaven and earth now seeks a place to rest, and with happiness all light has become calmer. O afternoon of my life! I first encountered my happiness in the valley on an afternoon, and then I found it once more on another afternoon. Now, in the afternoon of my life, I have surrendered much to have one thing, this living garden of my thoughts and the dawn of my highest hope. Once, the Creator sought companions and children of his hope, and behold, he could not find them unless he first created them himself. So I find myself in the midst of my work, going to my children and returning from them. For the sake of his children, Zarathustra must perfect himself. For in one's heart, one loves only one's child and one's work, and where there is great self-love, it is a sign of pregnancy. That's what I have discovered. My children are still in their first spring, standing close together, swaying in unison in the wind. They are the trees of my garden, my best soil, and where such trees stand close together, there are happy isles. But one day I will separate them and place each one alone. They will learn solitude, defiance, and prudence. Gnarled and twisted, with flexible strength, they will stand by the sea, like living lighthouses of unconquerable life. There, where the storms rush into the sea and the mountain's snout drinks water, each of them will have their day and night watches for testing and recognition. Each will be recognized and tested to see if they are of my type and lineage, masters of a long will, speaking silently even when they speak, giving in such a way that they receive. So that one day they may become my companions, fellow creators, and fellow enjoyers with Zarathustra. They will write my will on my tablets to perfect all things. And for their sake, and for those like them, I must perfect myself. That's why I now avoid my own happiness and present myself to every misfortune for my final test and recognition. It's time for me to go. The shadow of the wanderer, the longest tedium, and the stillest hour have all told me it's high time. The word whispered through the keyhole, saying, "Come." The door opened subtly and said, "Go." But I am bound by my love for my children. Desire has set this trap for me, the desire for love, to become prey to my children and lose myself in them. Desiring, that's what it means to have lost myself. I possess you, my children. In this possession, everything is assurance, and nothing is desire. But the sun of my love has brooded over me, and within me, shadows and doubts have awakened. I long for frost and winter. Oh, that frost and winter would come to make me shiver and crunch. My past has risen from its grave. Many pains that were buried alive have awakened. They had only been asleep, concealed in corpse clothes. Everything called out to me with signs, "It's time." But I didn't hear until at last my abyss stirred, and my thoughts bit me. Ah, abysmal thought, which is my thought. When will I find the strength to hear you digging and not tremble? My heart throbs all the way to my throat when I hear you digging. Even your silence is like strangling me, you abysmal silent one. I have never dared to call you up. It's been enough that I carried you with me. I have not been strong enough for my final lion wantonness and playfulness. Your weight has always been sufficiently formidable for me. But one day I will find the strength and the lion's voice to call you up. When I have overcome you in that, then I will overcome even greater challenges. Victory will be the seal of my perfection. Meanwhile, I sail on uncertain seas. Chance flatters me, smooth-tongued chance. I look forward and backward, but I still see no end. The hour of my final struggle has not yet come, or perhaps it is just now arriving. Truly, sea and life look at me insidiously, surrounding me with deceptive beauty. O afternoon of my life, O happiness before evening, O haven on the high seas, O peace in uncertainty. I distrust all of you, your insidious beauty. I am like a lover who distrusts a too smooth smile. I push away this blissful hour, for it has come at the wrong time. Go away, blissful hour. Your involuntary bliss is making me ready for my severest pain. I stand here now, prepared for my final test. But you have come at the wrong time. Go away, blissful hour. Seek shelter with my children instead. Bless them with my happiness before evening arrives. Evening is approaching. The sun is sinking. Go away, my happiness. So spoke Zarathustra, and he waited for his misfortune throughout the night, but it did not come. The night remained clear and calm, and happiness itself drew closer to him. Towards morning, Zarathustra laughed in his heart and said mockingly, "Happiness is chasing after me. That's because I do not chase after women, but happiness is a woman." In this chapter, Zarathustra reflects on the paradox of happiness and struggle, a central theme in Nietzsche's philosophy. The chapter opens with Zarathustra recounting his journey away from the Happy Isles, leaving behind the comfort of friends and familiar surroundings. Despite his initial sorrow, he overcomes his pain and embraces his destiny with renewed vigor. He speaks to his exulting conscience, recognizing that his solitary path is necessary for his continued self-overcoming. Zarathustra draws a parallel between his current state and the afternoon of his life, a metaphor for maturity and a time when light softens before the coming night. He recalls that it was during a similar afternoon that he first found his happiness and his children, those whom he wishes to shape into fellow creators. However, Zarathustra acknowledges that these children, representing his ideals and values, are still young and untested. Like trees growing close together in a sheltered garden, they have yet to face storms and solitude. Zarathustra envisions a future where he separates them, placing each alone by the sea, to test and strengthen them through adversity. Only then will they become truly resilient and worthy companions. But Zarathustra's love for his creations also binds him. His desire to nurture them traps him, threatening to divert him from his own quest for perfection. This internal conflict awakens doubts and abysmal thoughts within him, buried pains and uncertainties from his past that rise to challenge his resolve. He yearns for struggle and hardship, seeing them as crucial for his own transformation. Yet, at the same time, an involuntary bliss surrounds him, making him suspicious. This bliss, arriving unbidden, represents a temptation to complacency, a deceptive peace that could hinder his self-mastery. The chapter ends with a sense of tension. Zarathustra is torn between the comfort of fleeting happiness and the need to continue his arduous path. His mockery of happiness as a woman chasing him illustrates his wariness of embracing joy too soon. He recognizes that real growth requires the courage to endure suffering and face one's deepest fears. Even as he pushes away this untimely bliss, he prepares himself for a greater challenge ahead, determined to achieve his ultimate victory. Overall, this chapter encapsulates Nietzsche's belief that true fulfillment comes not from comfort or ease, but from overcoming oneself through continuous struggle and striving. Happiness, in Zarathustra's view, is secondary. It must not become a distraction from the quest for greatness. Thus, involuntary bliss serves as a reminder that true growth often comes from resisting premature satisfaction and remaining vigilant, even in moments of unexpected joy. Chapter 48. Before Sunrise. O heavenly sky above me, you pure, profound heaven, you abyss of light. Gazing upon you, I tremble with divine desires. To cast myself up to your height, that is my depth. To hide myself in your purity, that is my innocence. The god veils his beauty, and so do you hide your stars. You do not speak. Thus, you proclaim your wisdom to me. You rise silently over the raging sea today. Your love and modesty reveal themselves to my tumultuous soul. In coming to me, beautiful and veiled in your beauty, and speaking to me silently but clearly in your wisdom, how could I not perceive the modesty of your soul? You arrived before the sun, the loneliest one. We have been friends from the beginning. We share grief, horror, and ground in common. Even the sun is common to us. We do not need words, for we know too much. We remain silent to each other, smiling with the knowledge we share. Aren't you the light of my fire? Don't you possess the sister soul of my insight? Together, we have learned everything. We've learned to transcend ourselves and smile unconditionally, even when constraint, purpose, and guilt flow beneath us like rain. When I wandered alone, what did my soul long for in the night and in labyrinthine paths? When I climbed mountains, whom did I seek if not you, on those mountains? All my wanderings and mountain climbing were necessities and makeshifts for the unhandy one. My entire will desires only to fly into you. What have I hated more than passing clouds and anything that taints you? I have even hated my own hatred because it tainted you. I detest passing clouds, those stealthy predators, for they take away what is common between you and me, the vast, boundless affirmation. We detest these mediators and mixers, the passing clouds, those half-and-half beings who have neither learned to bless nor curse with their hearts. I'd rather sit in a tub under a closed sky, or in the abyss without a sky, than see you, the luminous heaven, tainted by passing clouds. I have often wished to pin them with jagged golden lightning wires, to beat their kettle bellies like a furious drummer, for they steal from me and you our affirmation and agreement. I hate them. I'd rather have noise, thunder, and tempest blasts than this discreet, doubting, cat-like tranquility. Among humans, I hate most those who walk softly, the half-and-half ones, the doubting and hesitating, like passing clouds. He who cannot bless shall learn to curse. This clear teaching came from the clear sky and stands in my heaven even on dark nights. I am a blesser and a yaysayer. That's why I struggled for so long and strived, so that one day I would have my hands free for blessing. My blessing is this: to stand above everything as its own heaven, its round roof, its azure bell, and eternal security. Blessed is he who blesses in this way. All things are baptized in the font of eternity, beyond good and evil. Good and evil themselves are transient shadows and passing clouds. Indeed, it is a blessing, not blasphemy, when I teach that above all things stands the heaven of chance, the heaven of innocence, the heaven of hazard, the heaven of wantonness. Of hazard, this is the oldest nobility in the world, which I gave back to all things, emancipating them from the bondage of purpose. I placed this freedom and celestial serenity above all things, teaching that there is no eternal will ruling over them. I replaced that will with wantonness and folly, teaching that, in everything, there is one thing impossible: rationality. A little reason, a germ of wisdom scattered from star to star. This leaven is mixed in all things. For the sake of folly, wisdom is mixed in all things. A little wisdom is indeed possible, but the blessed security I found in all things is that they prefer to dance on the feet of chance. O heavenly sky above me, you pure exalted sky, this is your purity to me, that there is no eternal reason spider and reason cobweb. You are a dancing floor for divine chances, a table of the gods for divine dice and dice players. But you blush. Have I uttered unspeakable things? Have I abused when I meant to bless you? Or is it the shame of being two that makes you blush? Do you bid me to go and be silent because now the day is coming? The world is deep, deeper than the day can fathom. Not everything can be spoken in the presence of day. But day is coming, so let us part. O heavenly sky above me, you modest one, you radiant one, O my happiness before sunrise. The day is coming, so let us part. Thus spoke Zarathustra. In Before Sunrise, Zarathustra offers a lyrical monologue addressed to the sky, expressing his sense of unity with the vast, star-studded heavens. The chapter is imbued with a mystical tone, reflecting themes of transcendence, purity, and liberation. Through this poetic address, Nietzsche explores the nature of affirmation, the rejection of human constraints, and the quest for spiritual freedom. Zarathustra's dialogue with the sky is not just a conversation, it is an act of worship, symbolizing his profound longing for the infinite and the pure. He sees the sky as a mirror of his own deepest desires and aspirations, representing the unattainable ideal, something both above and within him. The sky's silence becomes a form of wisdom, teaching him that true depth and insight do not require words, but must be felt intuitively. The heaven he addresses is untainted and untouched, standing in contrast to the chaotic, mundane world below. The chapter's central conflict is between Zarathustra's yearning for purity and the corrupting influence of the passing clouds. These clouds, representing mediocrity, doubt, and compromise, threaten to obscure his bond with the heavens. For Zarathustra, these transient entities disrupt the boundless affirmation he shares with the sky, much like the constraints of moral judgments and purposive thinking that obscure true freedom. He despises anything that dilutes or taints the purity of his experience, seeing it as an affront to his own striving for clarity and truth. Zarathustra's fierce rejection of the half-and-half beings, those who cannot fully bless or curse, who hover in indecision, is a rejection of inauthenticity. He hates these intermediaries because they diminish the full embrace of life's intensity and disrupt the pure yea-saying he seeks. For him, true freedom lies in affirming life in its entirety, without the rationality that tries to assign a moral or purposeful framework to it. This chapter echoes Nietzsche's earlier themes of amor fati, love of fate, and the idea that everything, even the seemingly chaotic and purposeless, should be embraced with joy. Zarathustra's blessing is the freedom of all things from eternal will, purpose, or rationality. He finds purity and liberation in viewing the universe not as a tightly ordered mechanism governed by reason, but as a playground for chance, randomness, and divine wantonness. He rejects any overarching purpose or divine plan, instead celebrating the world as a dancing floor for divine chances and a table of the gods for dice and dice players. This view upends conventional notions of a controlled, moral universe and replaces it with one that is driven by the spontaneity of hazard and folly. The closing lines of the chapter mark a moment of bittersweet parting as day breaks, signaling the end of this intimate communion. Zarathustra's relationship with the heavens is sacred, beyond what can be grasped by the light of day, which symbolizes the intrusion of the rational, public world. The dawn is not just the beginning of a new day. It is a reminder that not all truths can be spoken openly, and some experiences are too deep for words. This parting reflects the necessity of separating the sublime from the ordinary, a motif Nietzsche often uses to emphasize the divide between higher and lower forms of existence. In sum, Before Sunrise is a meditation on transcendence, purity, and the rejection of mediocrity. Zarathustra yearns for a form of existence beyond good and evil, beyond rational constraints, a life that dances with divine spontaneity. His worship of the sky and his hatred for the passing clouds embody his desire to affirm life's chaos and beauty without compromise. Chapter 49. The Virtue of Humility. Zarathustra's Return, Reflections on the Shrinking World of Men. When Zarathustra returned to the continent, he didn't immediately head to his mountains and cave. Instead, he embarked on numerous wanderings and inquiries, seeking to understand what had transpired among men during his absence, whether they had grown greater or smaller. On his journey, he encountered new houses and was puzzled by them. He remarked, "What do these houses mean? Surely no great soul erected them as a symbol. Did perhaps a foolish child take them out of its toy box? I wish another child would put them back in the box. And these rooms and chambers, can people actually go in and out of them? They seem to be made for silk dolls, or for those who prefer dainty meals, perhaps sharing them with others." Zarathustra paused and contemplated. Eventually, he expressed his sadness, saying, "Everything has become smaller. I see lower doorways everywhere. Those of my kind can still pass through them, but we must stoop. Oh, when will I return home, where I no longer have to stoop before the small ones?" Zarathustra sighed and gazed into the distance. On that same day, he delivered his discourse on the diminishing virtue. Zarathustra's controversial presence, unmasking small virtues and hypocrisy. I pass through this people and keep my eyes open. They do not forgive me for not envying their virtues. They criticize me because I tell them that small people require small virtues, and it's hard for me to accept that small people are necessary. Here, I am like a rooster in a strange farmyard, and even the hens peck at me. But I'm not unfriendly to them. I am polite to them, just as I am to all small annoyances. Being prickly towards what is small seems like wisdom to me, like hedgehogs. They talk about me when they gather around their fire in the evening, but no one truly understands me. This is the new silence I have experienced. Their noise around me covers my thoughts. They shout to each other, wondering what this gloomy cloud, referring to me, will do to them. They fear it might bring a plague upon them. Recently, a woman even grabbed her child who was approaching me, fearing that my eyes would harm the child's soul. They cough when I speak, thinking that coughing is a response to strong winds, without understanding the strength of my happiness. They say, "We don't have time for Zarathustra," but what does time matter to one who has no time for Zarathustra? Even if they were to praise me, how could I fall asleep to their praise? Their praise feels like a girdle of spines. It scratches me when I take it off. Among them, I've learned that the praiser acts as if he is giving back, but in truth, he wants more to be given to him. Ask my foot if their praises and flattering tunes please it. It doesn't. It neither wants to dance to their measure nor stand still. They try to lure and praise me with small virtues, attempting to convince my foot with their tick-tock of small happiness. I pass through this people and keep my eyes open. They have become smaller and continue to shrink. The reason for this is their doctrine of happiness and virtue. They are moderate in virtue because they seek comfort, and moderate virtue is compatible with comfort. They try to stride forward in their way, but it's more like hobbling. They become obstacles to those in haste. Some of them go forward while looking backward with stiffened necks, and those are the ones I like to encounter. Foot and I should not lie or contradict each other, but among small people there is much lying. Some of them will, but most are willing to be influenced. Some are genuine, but most are bad actors. There are even those who act without knowing it, and actors without intending it. Genuine ones are rare, especially genuine actors. There is little of true manliness here, and that's why their women become more masculine. Only a man strong enough can save the woman in a woman. The worst hypocrisy I found among them is that even those who command pretend to have the virtues of those who serve. They chant, "I serve, you serve, we serve," and alas, if the First Lord is only the first servant. I couldn't help but notice their hypocrisy, even in the rulers. I could see through their false happiness and their buzzing around sunny window panes. I see so much kindness, but it's often accompanied by weakness. They display justice and pity, but it's also mixed with weakness. They are courteous and considerate to each other, just as grains of sand are round, fair, and considerate to other grains of sand. To modestly embrace a small happiness is what they call submission, while they also seek new small happiness modestly. Their greatest desire is that no one harms them. They anticipate everyone's wishes and do well to everyone. But this is cowardice, even if it's called virtue. When they speak harshly, I hear only their hoarseness, and every draught of air makes them hoarse. They are clever, and their virtues have shrewd fingers, but they lack fists. Their fingers don't know how to creep behind fists. Virtue for them means being modest and tame, turning the wolf into a dog, and man into man's best domesticated animal. They say to me, we set our chair in the middle, far from dying gladiators and satisfied swine. But that is mediocrity, even though they call it moderation. Zarathustra's prophetic warning, the great noontide approaches. I pass through this people and speak many words, but they neither know how to grasp nor how to retain them. They wonder why I did not come to condemn lust and vice, and indeed, I did not come to warn against pickpockets either. They wonder why I am not ready to support and sharpen their wisdom, as if they did not have enough of wiseacres whose voices grate on my ears like chalk on a slate. And when I cry out, curse all the cowardly devils within you, those who want to whimper, fold their hands and adore, they shout, Zarathustra is godless. Especially their teachers of submission proclaim this, but it is precisely in their ears that I love to declare, yes, I am Zarathustra, the godless. Those teachers of submission, wherever there is something weak, feeble, or afflicted, there they crawl like lice. Only my disgust prevents me from crushing them. Well, this is my sermon for their ears. I am Zarathustra the godless, who asks, who is more godless than I, that I may learn from their teaching? I am Zarathustra the godless, and where do I find my equals? All those are my equals who give themselves their own will and rid themselves of all submission. I am Zarathustra the godless. I cook every chance in my pot, and only when it has been thoroughly cooked do I welcome it as my food. Many chances have come to me imperiously, but even more imperiously did my will speak to them. Then they knelt down, imploring to find a home and heart in me, saying flatteringly, see, O Zarathustra, how a friend comes to a friend. But why am I speaking when no one is listening? So I will shout it to the winds. You, small people, are becoming even smaller. You crumble away, you comfort-loving ones. You will perish by your many small virtues, by your many small omissions, and by your many small submissions. Your soil is too tender, too yielding. But for a tree to become great, it seeks to anchor its roots around hard rocks. Even what you emit weaves the fabric of all human future. Your inaction is like a cobweb, a spider that feeds on the blood of the future. When you take, it is like stealing, even among the virtuous ones. But even among rogues, honor says, one should only steal when one cannot rob. It gives itself is also a doctrine of submission. But I say to you, comfortable ones, that it takes to itself, and will continue to take more and more from you. Oh, that you would renounce all half-willing, and decide for idleness as you decide for action. Oh, that you understood my words. Do whatever you will, but first be those who can will. Love your neighbor as yourselves, but first be those who love themselves, those who love with great love, and those who love with great contempt. Thus speaks Zarathustra the godless. But why am I speaking when no one is listening? It is still an hour too early for me here. I am my own precursor among this people, my own rooster in the dark alleyways, but their hour is coming, and so is mine. They become smaller, poorer, and less fruitful with each passing hour, poor herbs, poor soil. And soon they will stand before me like dry grass in a barren field, weary of themselves, yearning for fire more than for water. O blessed hour of lightning, O the mystery before noon! I will one day turn them into running fires and messengers with tongues of flame. They will proclaim with fiery tongues, it is coming, it is near, the great noontide. Thus spoke Zarathustra. In this chapter, Zarathustra returns to observe society after a long period of absence, only to find a world that has diminished in spirit and ambition. His encounter with the new houses symbolizes a society that has become constricted, preoccupied with comfort and smallness. He remarks with sadness that everything has become smaller, reflecting not just physical limitations, but a metaphorical shrinking of values, courage, and creativity. Zarathustra sees that modern virtues, which should ideally uplift humanity, have been diluted into mere instruments of mediocrity. The core of this chapter revolves around Nietzsche's critique of what he sees as the degeneration of virtues into complacency and weakness. For Nietzsche, true virtue requires strength, risk, and greatness, qualities that demand one stand tall and refuse to stoop. Zarathustra is dismayed by people's preference for small virtues that cater to comfort rather than challenge. These include traits like modesty, docility, and politeness, which serve to reinforce conformity rather than encourage genuine self-overcoming. Zarathustra's disdain for this form of virtue is evident as he compares himself to a rooster in a strange farmyard, pecked at by hens who cannot comprehend his presence. He criticizes society's obsession with mediocrity, where people prioritize security, avoidance of conflict, and the pursuit of small pleasures. Zarathustra sees this fixation as a kind of cowardice disguised as humility, where people are more concerned with avoiding discomfort than seeking greatness. Their so-called virtues are, in his view, a mockery of true nobility, as they serve to keep everyone equally small, stifling true individual potential. A major theme in this chapter is the hypocrisy of those in power. Even leaders have adopted the language of servitude, claiming to serve rather than to lead, thereby masking their authority in false modesty. This is particularly dangerous, as it distorts the nature of leadership and virtue, making strength appear as weakness and subservience as honor. Nietzsche's critique here is sharp. A society where even its rulers pretend to be humble cannot produce individuals capable of greatness. Zarathustra's frustration builds as he laments that, instead of striving for heroic ideals, people have settled for being round, fair, and considerate grains of sand. This is Nietzsche's critique of modern democratic values, which he sees as elevating mediocrity while devaluing exceptionalism. The chapter is a condemnation of a world where even virtues are watered down into tools of social comfort, robbing humanity of its potential to aspire for something greater. Ultimately, Zarathustra warns that the obsession with small virtues will lead to the demise of society. He predicts that these self-imposed limitations will turn people into dry, barren soil, incapable of growth. This diminishing world, yearning for fire more than water, awaits a transformative event, what Zarathustra calls the Great Noontide. He foresees a time when people will become desperate enough to seek something greater, and it will take the form of a radical, fiery transformation that will sweep away the comfort-loving smallness and bring forth a new kind of greatness. Through this chapter, Nietzsche uses Zarathustra to expose the dangers of false humility, moral complacency, and the erosion of true virtues. He calls for a return to strength, courage, and authentic values that elevate humanity rather than diminish it. The virtue of humility is, for Nietzsche, not a true virtue, but a mask for mediocrity, and Zarathustra stands as a prophet warning against this tide of shrinking values and the dire need for a resurgence of greatness. Chapter 50. On the Olive Mount. Winter, an unwelcome guest, is here in my home. My hands have turned blue from his chilly handshakes. I honor him, the unwelcome guest, but I also gladly leave him alone. I'm eager to escape from him, and when one runs well, one can outrun him. With warm feet and warm thoughts, I run to where the wind is calm, to the sunny corner of my olive-covered hill. There, I laugh at my stern guest, and still hold some fondness for him. After all, he clears my house of flies and quiets many little noises. He doesn't tolerate the buzzing of a gnat, or even two of them, and he makes the lanes quiet, so much so that the moonlight is afraid to shine there at night. He's a tough guest, but I honor him without worshipping him like those tender souls who worship the pot-bellied fire idol. I'd rather have a little teeth chattering than idol worship. That's my nature. I particularly dislike all fiery idols that are too ardent, steaming, and steamy. I love those I love more in winter than in summer. I now mock my enemies more heartily when winter is in my house. Even when I crawl into bed, my hidden happiness continues to laugh. Me, a crawler. I've never crawled before the powerful, and if I ever lied, it was out of love. So, I'm glad even in my winter bed. A simple bed warms me more than a luxurious one because I'm fond of my poverty. In winter, my poverty is most faithful to me. I begin each day with a bit of mischief. I mock winter with a cold bath. My stern housemate grumbles at that. I like to tease him with a wax taper, so he'll let the heavens emerge from their ashy grey twilight. I'm especially mischievous in the morning when I impatiently await the clear sky, the snow-covered winter sky, the hoary one, the one that often obscures even its own sun. Did I perhaps learn from it the long, clear silence, or did it learn it from me? Or did each of us discover it on our own? The origin of all good things is manifold, and all good mischievous things arise for joy. They can't always be mischievous for just one moment. Long silence is also a good mischievous thing, and looking with a clear, round-eyed countenance like the winter sky, stifling one's own sun and unwavering solar will. Truly, I have learned this art, and this winter mischief well. My favourite mischief and art is the art of my silence, which has learned not to betray itself with silence. By rattling with words and dice, I outwit the solemn assistants, those stern observers. My will and purpose elude them all. So that no one may see into my depths and into my ultimate will, I've devised the long, clear silence. I've encountered many shrewd individuals who veil their faces and muddy their waters so that no one can see through or underneath. But it's precisely those shrewder distrusters and nutcrackers who come to him and discover his best concealed treasures. But the clear, honest, and transparent individuals are the wisest silent ones to me. In them, the depth is so profound that even the clearest water doesn't reveal it. O snow-covered, silent winter sky, you round-eyed whitehead above me, you heavenly likeness of my soul and its mischievousness. Must I not conceal myself like someone who has swallowed gold, lest my soul be ripped apart? Must I not wear stilts so they may overlook my long legs, all those envious and injurious people around me? Those dingy, fire-warmed, worn-out, green-tinted, ill-natured souls, how could they endure my happiness? Thus, I only show them the ice and winter of my peaks, and not that my mountain wins all the solar belts around it. They only hear the whistling of my winter storms, not knowing that I also travel over warm seas like longing, heavy, hot south winds. They pity me for my accidents and misfortunes, but my word says, let chance come to me. It is as innocent as a little child. How could they endure my happiness if I didn't surround it with accidents, winter deprivations, fur caps, and enshrouding snowflakes? If I didn't also commiserate with their pity, the pity of those who envy and harm me? If I didn't sigh before them and chatter with cold, patiently letting myself be swathed in their pity? This is the wise, mischievous, and good-hearted will of my soul, to not conceal its winters and icy storms. It doesn't hide its chilblains either. For some, loneliness is the flight of the sick, and for others, it's the flight from the sick. Let them hear me chatter and sigh with winter cold, all those poor squinting rascals around me. With such sighing and chattering, I escape from their overheated rooms. Let them sympathize with me and sigh with me because of my chilblains. He will freeze to death in the ice of knowledge, they mourn. Meanwhile, I run with warm feet back and forth on my olive-covered hill. In the sunny corner of my olive-covered hill, I sing and mock all pity. Thus sang Zarathustra.
In this chapter, Zarathustra reflects on the arrival of winter in his home, using it as a metaphor for the hardships and challenges of life. He personifies winter as an unwelcome guest describing its coldness and discomfort, yet maintains a stoic acceptance of its presence. Rather than succumbing to self-pity or despair, Zarathustra mocks winter and its icy grip, showing a playful defiance and resilience. He chooses to honor winter without worshipping it, resisting the tendency to seek comfort and warmth at the expense of his strength and independence. Zarathustra's retreat to the sunny corner of his olive-covered hill symbolizes his inner sanctuary, a place of warmth and light that contrasts with the harshness of winter. This olive mount represents a space of personal serenity and joy, untouched by external adversities. Here, Zarathustra finds peace and freedom, embodying a spirit of playful mischief as he teases his stern guest. Despite the cold, he remains cheerful and unbroken, finding pleasure even in discomfort. The chapter also touches on themes of self-concealment and the art of silence. Zarathustra reveals that he uses silence and ambiguity as a protective mask, hiding his true strength and happiness from envious and malicious onlookers. He deliberately shows others only the harsh winter aspects of his soul, keeping the full brilliance of his sunny self hidden. This concealment is not deceitful, but a strategic way to shield his deeper joy and vitality from those who would misunderstand or harm him. Zarathustra's resistance to the pity of others is central to his philosophy. He scorns those who would pity him for enduring the cold, misunderstanding his strength as weakness. Instead, he embraces the trials of winter, using them to assert his independence and mock those who are trapped by their need for constant warmth and comfort. To them, his hardships appear as suffering, but for Zarathustra, they are the signs of a deeper freedom and strength. Ultimately, the chapter is about resilience, self-mastery, and the defiance of external adversity. Winter, with all its discomforts, becomes a tool for Zarathustra to sharpen his will and prove his inner vitality. His laughter, his playful defiance, and his insistence on showing only his icy peaks to others symbolize his triumph over life's hardships and his refusal to be diminished by them. This is Zarathustra's way of turning even the bleakest season into an affirmation of his power and joy.
Chapter 51, On Passing By. Slowly wandering through many lands and diverse cities, Zarathustra eventually returned to his mountains and his cave by taking roundabout paths. Unexpectedly, he arrived at the gate of the great city. There, a frenzied fool with outstretched hands sprang forward and blocked his way. This was the same fool whom the people called the Ape of Zarathustra, because he had learned from Zarathustra the art of expression and modulation of language. Perhaps he also liked borrowing wisdom from Zarathustra. The fool addressed Zarathustra in the following manner: "O Zarathustra, here is the great city, a place where you have nothing to seek and everything to lose. Why would you tread through this mire? Spare your feet, spit on the city's gate and turn back. In this city, the thoughts of hermits become a living hell. Great thoughts are cooked and reduced to triviality here. All great emotions wither away, leaving only hollow sensations behind. Can't you smell the butcheries and spirit slaughtering that permeate this city? Can't you see the souls hanging like limp, dirty rags, with newspapers made from their remains? Do you not hear the degeneration of language into a meaningless game? It vomits forth repulsive verbal filth, and newspapers are made from this verbal sewage. They attack and insult each other without knowing why. They jingle with gold and tinkle with their pinchbeck. They seek warmth in distilled waters when they are cold, and coldness in frozen spirits when they are inflamed. They are all sick and afflicted by public opinion. All desires and vices are at home here, but so are the virtuous ones. There is an abundance of appointed virtues, virtue with scribe-like fingers, virtue with hard and enduring buttocks, blessed with small breast stars, and daughters with padded hips. Piety is abundant here, along with sycophantic worship and the licking of spittle before the god of hosts. They thirst for approval from on high, and even the moon calms every starless bosom. The moon has its court, and the court has its moon calves. But the mendicant people pray to everything that comes from the court, and they praise all appointed mendicant virtues. I serve, you serve, we serve. That's what all appointed virtue says to the prince, hoping to receive a star on their slender chests. But the moon still revolves around earthly matters, and the prince is preoccupied with earthly things, especially the gold of the shopkeepers. The god of war's hosts is not the god of the golden bars. The prince proposes, but the shopkeeper disposes. By all that is luminous, strong, and noble in you, Zarathustra, spit on this city of shopkeepers and turn back. Here, everything is tainted and corrupted. Spit on this great city, which is a cesspool where all the filth gathers. Spit on the city of constricted souls, thin breasts, sharp eyes, and sticky fingers. This city is filled with the obnoxious, the shameless, the demagogues of pen and tongue, and the overly ambitious. Everything maimed, dishonorable, lustful, untrustworthy, overripe, sickly yellow, and seditious festers here. Spit on the great city and go back. However, Zarathustra interrupted the ranting fool and silenced him. "Stop this at once," cried Zarathustra. "Your speech and your presence have disgusted me for too long. Why did you live by the swamp for so long that you've become a frog and a toad yourself? Is there not enough green land and forests around? Are the seas not full of green islands? I despise your contempt, and when you warned me, why did you not heed your own warning? My contempt and my warning bird will fly only out of love, not from the swamp. They call you my ape, you frothy fool, but I call you my grunting pig. Your grunting tarnishes even my praise of folly. What made you start grunting? Was it because no one flattered you enough? So you chose to wallow in filth, finding reasons to grunt and seek vengeance. Your vengeance, you vain fool, is nothing but your foaming anger. I see through you. But your foolish words harm me, even when you are right. And even if my words were justified 100 times over, you would still twist them for your own purposes. That's enough of your nonsense. I'm done with you. Your grunting and your great city repulse me. I have loathed this city for a long time, not just you. There is neither improvement nor deterioration to be found here. Woe to this great city. I wish I could already see the pillar of fire in which it will be consumed. Such pillars of fire must precede the great noontide. But this has its own time and fate. I leave you with this parting advice, fool. When you can no longer love, then you should pass by. Having spoken thus, Zarathustra turned away from the fool and the great city. In this chapter, Zarathustra encounters a fool at the gate of the great city, a place of spiritual decay and moral corruption. The fool, mockingly called the ape of Zarathustra, urges him to turn back and avoid the city, portraying it as a cesspool where great thoughts are reduced to trivialities and noble emotions wither away. Through the fool's rant, Nietzsche provides a scathing critique of modern urban society, which he views as dominated by superficiality, greed, and a thirst for empty approval. The fool's warnings describe a society obsessed with appearances, filled with individuals who mimic virtue and piety for public recognition. This city, as Nietzsche sees it, represents the collapse of genuine values. Everything is hollow and performative. The god of war's hosts and the shopkeepers are metaphors for power and commerce, both vying for dominance but neither offering true purpose. The fool's grotesque caricature of this urban life highlights Nietzsche's disdain for a culture that prioritizes shallow ambition over authentic existence. Zarathustra, however, responds sharply to the fool, dismissing him as a hypocrite. The fool's anger, Zarathustra observes, stems not from a love of truth, but from bitterness and self-loathing. By staying too long in the swamp of the city, the fool has become as corrupt as those he condemns. Zarathustra's rebuke is a rejection of empty cynicism and hollow denunciations. If one is to warn or criticize, it must come from a place of genuine insight and love, not personal spite. Zarathustra's concluding advice, "When you can no longer love, then you should pass by," is a powerful statement on how to engage, or disengage, with a degenerate world. He implies that it is better to withdraw than to become poisoned by one's own contempt. Unlike the fool, who stays and festers, Zarathustra chooses to keep moving, refusing to be consumed by the hatred and degradation of the city. Nietzsche's message is clear. Engage with the world only when driven by a true desire to elevate it, not when corrupted by bitterness. If such love is no longer possible, the noble response is to simply pass by and let the city burn itself out. In essence, the chapter serves as a critique of societies that devour genuine greatness
and individuality, urging readers to be vigilant about where and how they invest their energies. Nietzsche warns that it is better to leave rather than stay and be corrupted by a world that no longer deserves one's love or effort. Chapter 52. The Apostates.
The Apostates, once vibrant, now withered hearts seek piety. Ah, has everything on this meadow already withered and turned grey, which not long ago was green and vibrant? How much honey of hope I brought to my beehives from here! Those young hearts have already grown old, not truly old, but weary, ordinary, comfortable. They proclaim, "We have become pious again." I recently saw them rushing forth with courageous steps in the early morning, but the feet of their knowledge grew tired, and now they even criticize their morning courage. Indeed, many of them once raised their legs like dancers. The laughter of my wisdom beckoned to them. But now I see them bent down, crawling toward the cross. They once fluttered around like gnats and young poets, seeking light and liberty. A little older, a little colder, and now they are mystifiers, mumblers, and mollycoddles. Did their hearts perhaps grow despondent because loneliness swallowed me like a whale? Did their ears long in vain for me and my trumpet notes and calls? Ah, there are always so few with persistent courage and exuberance, and in them the spirit remains patient. The rest are cowardly. The majority, the ordinary, the superfluous, most of them are cowardly. Those of my type will encounter the experiences of my type on their journey. Their first companions will be corpses and buffoons, but their second companions, they will call themselves believers, a living multitude with much love, much foolishness, and much bearded veneration. He who is of my type among men should not bind his heart to those believers. He should not believe in those springtimes and many-colored meadows, for he knows the fickle, faint-hearted nature of humanity. If they could do otherwise, they would will otherwise. The half-hearted spoil everything. What is there to lament about withered leaves? Let them go and fall away, O Zarathustra, and do not lament. It is better to blow among them with rustling winds. Blow among those leaves, O Zarathustra, so that everything withered may run away from you faster. Apostates return to piety, night watchmen, and doubts in the dark. We have become pious again, confess those apostates, and some of them are still too timid to admit it openly. I look them in the eye, and I say it to their face and to the blush on their cheeks. You are the ones who pray again, but it is a shame to pray, not for everyone, but for you and me, and whoever has a conscience in their head. For you, it is a shame to pray. You know it well, the timid devil within you, which would rather fold its arms, place its hands in its bosom, and take it easy. This timid devil persuades you that there is a God. By doing so, you belong to the type that fears the light, the type to whom the light never allows rest. Now you must daily bury your head deeper into obscurity and mist. And indeed, you choose the hour well, for now the nocturnal birds are once again flying abroad. It is the hour for all those who fear the light, the vesper hour, and the leisure hour when they do not take leisure. I hear it and smell it. Their time has come for hunting and procession, not a wild hunt, but a tame, lame, sniffling, soft-footed, soft-preying hunt. It's a hunt for susceptible simpletons, and all sorts of traps for the heart have been set. And whenever I lift a curtain, a night moth rushes out. Did it perhaps sit there along with another night moth? For everywhere I smell small hidden communities, and wherever there are closets, there are new devotees therein, and the atmosphere of devotees. They sit together for long evenings saying, "Let us become like little children again," and say, "Good God," ruined in mouths and stomachs by pious confectioners. Or they spend long evenings watching a crafty, lurking cross-spider, which preaches prudence even to the spiders themselves, and teaches that it is good for spinning cobwebs under crosses. Or they sit all day at swamps with fishing rods and think they are profound. But whoever fishes where there are no fish, I don't even consider him superficial. Or they learn to play the harp with a hymn poet in a godly and cheerful manner, trying to charm themselves into the hearts of young girls, for he has grown tired of old girls and their praises. Or they learn to shudder in a scholarly and half-madcap way, waiting in darkened rooms for spirits to come to them, and the spirits run away entirely. Or they listen to an old wandering howl and growl piper, who has learned from the sad winds the sadness of sounds. He now plays as the wind and preaches sadness in mournful strains. And some of them have become night watchmen. They have learned how to blow horns, go about at night, and awaken old things that have long fallen asleep. I heard 5 words about old things last night at the garden wall, They came from such old, sorrowful, arid night watchmen. "He does not care enough for his children, like human fathers do," said one. "He is too old. He no longer cares for his children," replied the other night watchman. "Does he even have children?"
"No one can prove it unless he proves it himself."
"I've long wished that he would prove it thoroughly." "Prove it? As if he ever proved anything. Proving is difficult for him. He places great importance on others believing him." "Yes, yes, belief saves him. Belief in him. That's how it is with old people. That's how it is with us too." Thus spoke the two old night watchmen and light scarers, and they sorrowfully tooted their horns. That's what happened last night at the garden wall. But my heart twisted with laughter, ready to break. It didn't know where to go and sank into my midriff. Indeed, it might be my death one day, to choke with laughter when I see drunken donkeys and hear night watchmen doubting God in this way. Hasn't the time long since passed for all such doubts? Who can awaken such old, slumbering, light-shunning things nowadays? The age of the old gods has long since ended, and truly, it ended well with a joyful divine end. They did not gloom themselves to death. That's something people invent. On the contrary, they laughed themselves to death once upon a time. It happened when the ungodliest utterance came from a god himself, the utterance, "There is but one God, you shall have no other gods before me." An old, jealous god with a long beard forgot himself in this way, and all the gods laughed and shook on their thrones, exclaiming, "Isn't it divine that there are gods but no God? Whoever has ears, let him hear." Thus spoke Zarathustra in the city he loved, known as the Pied Cow. He was only 2 days' journey away from his cave and his animals, and his soul rejoiced continuously at the thought of returning home.
In this chapter, Zarathustra laments the decline of his former followers, who were once inspired by his message of freedom and self-overcoming. These followers, once vibrant and courageous, have now regressed into piety and conventional faith. They have turned into what Nietzsche scornfully calls apostates, those who abandon their higher aspirations for the comfort of religious devotion and moral conformity. Zarathustra recalls how these individuals once sought knowledge and danced with joy around his teachings. However, over time, their initial courage waned, and they returned to a state of spiritual lethargy, embracing the very values they once rejected. He depicts them as having grown older and colder, surrendering to fear and choosing the safety of piety over the uncertainty of striving for greatness. Their conversion to religious faith is portrayed not as a genuine awakening, but as a capitulation to weariness and despair. Nietzsche's criticism here is sharp. These so-called believers are not motivated by true conviction, but by fear and exhaustion. They have chosen faith not out of strength, but because it provides an easy refuge from the loneliness and challenges of intellectual freedom. Zarathustra suggests that their prayers and piety are shameful, driven by the timid devil within them, an internal weakness that makes them seek shelter in dogma rather than confronting life's complexities head-on. Zarathustra also mocks their attempts to return to innocence by becoming like little children, pointing out that this retreat into faith is nothing but cowardice disguised as piety. He sees them as engaging in hollow rituals and empty spiritual practices, fishing in swamps, playing the harp to charm others, or engaging in occult rituals, all superficial attempts to mask their inner emptiness. The second part of the chapter extends this critique to the night watchmen, old men clinging to outdated beliefs. These figures symbolize the stagnant guardians of traditional morality and religion who question their faith but are too enmeshed in it to let go. Their doubts are tinged with nostalgia and bitterness, reflecting the dying remnants of old dogmas that still haunt society. Nietzsche ends with a vision of the death of the old gods, who, unlike these pious followers, did not linger in sorrow. Instead, they laughed themselves to death in a joyful recognition of their own end. The chapter thus contrasts the dynamic, life-affirming nature of genuine strength and creativity with the pitiful stagnation of those who, out of fear, cling to dead values and empty rituals. In essence, The Apostates is Nietzsche's condemnation of spiritual regression and the retreat to faith as a refuge for the weak. Zarathustra's warning is clear. Those who abandon the struggle for authenticity will ultimately fall back into the safety of dogma and die spiritually, becoming mere shadows of what they could have been. He calls for courage and perseverance, rejecting the false comfort of piety in favor of relentless self-overcoming.
Chapter 53. The Return Home. O lonesomeness, my home lonesomeness, I have lived in wild solitude for too long to return to you without tears. Now point your finger at me as mothers do, smile upon me as mothers do, and simply say, who was it that rushed away from me like a whirlwind? Who, when departing, exclaimed, I have spent too long with lonesomeness. There, I unlearned silence. Have you truly learned that now, Zarathustra? O Zarathustra, I know everything. I know that among the many you were more forsaken than you ever were with me. Forsakenness is one thing, lonesomeness another. You have now learned that among men you will always be wild and strange, even when they love you, for above all, they want to be treated indulgently. Here, you are at home with yourself. You can express everything and reveal all motives. Nothing is ashamed or hidden here. Concealed emotions and frozen feelings have no place. Here, everything approaches you with tenderness, wanting to ride on your back. Every analogy you make brings you closer to every truth. You can talk openly and directly to everything here, and it sounds like praise to their ears. But forsakenness is different. Do you remember, Zarathustra, when your bird screamed overhead, and you stood in the forest, uncertain, not knowing where to go, beside a corpse? When you said, let my animals lead me. I have found men more dangerous than animals. That was forsakenness. Do you remember, Zarathustra, when you sat on your island, a well of wine giving and sharing among empty buckets, bestowing and distributing among the thirsty? Until you alone sat there thirsty among the drunken ones, lamenting, is taking not more blessed than giving, and stealing even more blessed than taking? That was forsakenness. Do you remember, Zarathustra, when your quietest hour came, driving you out of yourself, whispering wickedly, speak and surrender, when it disgusted you with all your waiting and silence, discouraging your humble courage? That was forsakenness. O lonesomeness, my home, lonesomeness, your voice speaks to me so blessedly and tenderly. We don't question each other or complain. We walk together openly through open doors. Everything is open and clear with you, and time passes more lightly here. In the dark, time feels heavier than in the light. Here, all the words and word cabinets of existence fly open to me. Everything in existence wants to become words, and everything in the process of becoming wants to learn how to speak from me. But down there, all talk is in vain. There, forgetting and passing by are the highest wisdom, and that's what I've learned now. To understand everything in humanity, one must engage with everything. But my hands are too clean for that. I don't even want to breathe their air. Alas, I have lived too long among their noise and foul breath. O blessed stillness around me, O pure sense around me. This stillness draws pure breath from a deep chest. It listens, this blessed stillness. But down there, everything speaks, and everything is misunderstood. If one proclaims wisdom with bells, the marketplace hagglers will drown it out with pennies. Everything down there talks, but no one knows how to understand anymore. Everything falls into the water. Nothing falls into deep wells anymore. Everything talks, but nothing succeeds or accomplishes itself. Everything cackles, but who will sit quietly on the nest and hatch eggs? Everything down there talks, and everything is talked over. What was once too hard for time, and its tooth yesterday, hangs today, chewed up and mangled, from the mouths of today's men. Everything down there talks, and everything is betrayed. What used to be the secret and secrecy of profound souls now belongs to street trumpeters and other butterflies. O human hubbub, you wondrous thing, you noise in dark streets, now you are behind me, and my greatest danger lies behind me. Indulgence and pity have always been my greatest danger. Everyone in the human hubbub wishes to be indulged and tolerated. I have lived among men with suppressed truths, with a fool's hand and a deceived heart, rich in petty lies of pity. I disguised myself among them, ready to misjudge myself so that I could endure them. I willingly said to myself, you fool, you don't understand men. One unlearns about men when one lives among them. There is too much surface in all men. What can far-seeing, far-longing eyes do there? Fool that I was, when they misjudged me, I indulged them more than I indulged myself. I was habitually hard on myself, often taking revenge on myself for my own indulgence. I sat among them, stung all over by poisonous flies, hollowed out like a stone by many drops of wickedness. I still said to myself, petty things are innocent in their pettiness. Especially those who call themselves the good were the most poisonous flies. They sting in all innocence. They lie in all innocence. How could they be just towards me? Living among the good, pity teaches one to lie. Pity creates a stifling atmosphere for all free souls, for the stupidity of the good is unfathomable. I learned to conceal myself and my riches down there, for I found everyone to be poor in spirit. It was my pity that made me see and sense in everyone what was enough spirit for them, and what was too much. Their rigid wise men, I call them wise, not rigid, taught me to soften my words. Gravediggers dig diseases for themselves, and bad vapors rest under old rubbish. One should not disturb the marsh. One should live in the mountains. With blessed nostrils, I now breathe mountain freedom. My nose is finally free from the smell of human hubbub. My soul sneezes and shouts self-congratulatingly, "Health to you!" It sneezes like it's tickled by sharp breezes, like it's had a sip of sparkling wine. Thus spoke Zarathustra.
In this chapter, Zarathustra returns to his beloved solitude in the mountains, reflecting on his recent experiences among people in the great city. His return is marked by a profound realization of the stark differences between lonesomeness and forsakenness. Lonesomeness, to Zarathustra, is a welcome state where he is at peace and at home with himself, while forsakenness represents the emotional turmoil and alienation he felt when surrounded by people. Even when among men, he remained misunderstood and estranged, feeling more isolated there than in his remote solitude. The chapter reads like a love letter to lonesomeness, with Zarathustra rejoicing at his reunion with his true home. Lonesomeness offers clarity, openness, and honesty, qualities absent in the bustling city below. Nietzsche uses this contrast to highlight the toxicity of society, which drowns out deep thoughts, turns truth into spectacle, and demands indulgence rather than authenticity. In the city, Zarathustra found himself adapting and disguising his true self, compelled to tolerate the petty lies, false virtues, and shallow judgments of people. Zarathustra's return to solitude is a symbolic shedding of this false skin. He reflects on how living among men corrupted him, forcing him to hide his greatness to avoid being misunderstood or resented. This deception weighed heavily on him as he constantly sought to make himself relatable to a society that could not comprehend his depth. The chapter's tone is both triumphant and mournful, as Zarathustra celebrates his escape from human hubbub, but laments the wasted effort of trying to engage with those who cannot grasp his truths. The message is clear. True freedom and self-affirmation can only be found away from the corrupting influence of society, where one can think, speak, and live authentically. In solitude, Zarathustra can finally breathe freely, unburdened by the superficial expectations of others. Nietzsche's warning is that prolonged exposure to human hubbub poisons the soul and dulls the spirit. Thus, Zarathustra embraces his return to the mountains as a return to his true essence, where he can nurture his spirit without the need for masks or compromises. This chapter is a profound meditation on the need for solitude in cultivating wisdom and preserving one's inner truth. For Nietzsche, the return home is not just a physical retreat, but a spiritual reclamation, where Zarathustra can once again dwell in his own greatness, liberated from the petty lies and judgments of society. Through this return, Zarathustra affirms that authentic growth requires isolation and the courage to turn away from the noisy, chaotic world of men when it threatens to erode one's true self. Chapter 54. The Three Evil Things. Zarathustra's Morning Dream, Weighing the World, and Three Evil Things. In my dream, during my last morning dream, I found myself today standing on a promontory beyond the world. In my hands, I held a pair of scales, and I weighed the world itself. Alas, the rosy dawn came too early, awakening me, the jealous one. She always interrupts the radiant glows of my morning dreams. This world is measurable by those with time, weighable by skillful weighers, attainable by strong wings, and fathomable by divine nutcrackers.
So did my dream perceive the world. My dream was like a daring sailor, part ship, part hurricane, silent as a butterfly, impatient as a falcon. How did it find the patience and leisure today for weighing the world? Did perhaps my wisdom secretly speak to it, my laughing, wide-awake day wisdom that mocks all infinite worlds? For it says, where there is force, number becomes the master, for it possesses greater force. With such confidence, my dream contemplated this finite world, neither with novelty nor with oldness, not timidly or beseechingly. It was as if a large round apple were presented to my hand, a ripe golden apple with a cool, velvety skin. This is how the world appeared to me, like a tree nodding in my direction, a broad-branched, strong-willed tree, curved like a reclining and footrest for weary travellers. The world stood on my promontory as if delicate hands were carrying a chest towards me, an open chest for the delight of modest, adoring eyes. It was not a riddle frightening away human love, nor a solution that could lull human wisdom to sleep. To me, the world was a good human thing today, despite the bad things often said about it. I am grateful to my morning dream for allowing me to weigh the world in such a way at dawn today. It came to me as a good and comforting dream of the heart. Now, during the day, I wish to do the same, to imitate and copy its best aspects. I will place the 3 worst things on the scales and weigh them thoroughly, as a human would. He who taught us to bless also taught us to curse. So, what are the 3 worst cursed things in the world? I will place them on the scales and weigh them carefully. These 3 things have been cursed the most and have had the worst reputation: voluptuousness, passion for power, and selfishness. Now here on my promontory with the sea rolling towards me, I will hold the scales. I choose a witness to observe. You, the anchorite tree, you, the strong-scented, broad-arched tree that I love. On what bridge does the now cross over to the hereafter? By what compulsion does the high stoop to the low? And what still commands even the highest to grow upwards? Now the scales stand poised and still. I have placed 3 weighty questions on one side and 3 weighty answers on the other. The 3 evil things: voluptuousness, passion for power, and selfishness. Voluptuousness. To all ascetics who wear hair shirts and despise the body, it is a sharp sting and a stake to be endured. It is cursed as the world by those who reject worldly pleasures, for it mocks and confounds all misguided and misinformed teachers. Voluptuousness. To the common people, it is the slow fire that burns them, the prepared heat and stewing furnace for all decaying and filthy things. Voluptuousness. To free hearts, it is an innocent and liberating experience, the garden of earthly happiness, a manifestation of gratitude from the future to the present. Voluptuousness. To the withered souls, it is a sweet poison. To those with the will of a lion, it is a great elixir and the most sacred wine of wines. Voluptuousness. It symbolizes the happiness of a higher order and the greatest hope. For many, it promises not just marriage but something beyond it, something more profound. Yet, how many truly understand how unknown to each other man and woman often are? Voluptuousness. But I shall protect my thoughts and words with hedges, lest swine and libertines invade my gardens. Passion for power. It is the fiery scourge that lashes the hardest of hearts, the cruel torment reserved for the cruelest themselves. It is the dark flame of living pyres. Passion for power, the wicked gadfly that plagues the most vain of peoples, mocking uncertain virtues, riding on every horse and every form of pride. Passion for power, the earthquake that shatters all that is rotten and hollow, the rolling, rumbling, punishing destroyer of false facades, the probing question mark against premature answers. Passion for power. Before its gaze, humanity crawls, cowers, labors, and sinks lower than serpents and swine. Until, at last, a profound contempt rises from within. Passion for power, the stern teacher of great contempt, which proclaims to cities and empires, "Be gone," until a voice from within cries out, "Be gone from me." Passion for power, it can even ascend enticingly to the pure and solitary heights and seek self-satisfaction, radiating like a love that paints alluring purple bliss onto earthly heavens. Passion for power, but who would call it a passion when the lofty desires to descend for power? There is no sickness or disease in such longing and descending, so that the solitary heights may not forever remain solitary and self-sufficient, so that the mountains may come to the valleys, and the winds from the heights may touch the plains. Who could find the right name and honor for such longing? Zarathustra once named it bestowing virtue, the unnameable. And then, for the first time, something remarkable happened. His words blessed selfishness, the healthy, wholesome selfishness that springs from a powerful soul.
The selfishness of a powerful soul to which the noble body belongs, the beautiful, triumphant, invigorating body around which everything becomes a mirror.
The supple, persuasive body, the dancer, whose symbol and epitome is the self-enjoying soul. Such bodies and souls call their self-enjoyment virtue. With its words of good and bad, self-enjoyment shelters itself as in sacred groves. With the names of its happiness, it banishes everything contemptible. It banishes all that is cowardly, labeling it as bad. It finds the ever-anxious, the sighing, the complaining, and those who seek the smallest advantage contemptible. It also despises the bittersweet wisdom, the wisdom that blooms in the dark, the nightshade wisdom that continually sighs, all is in vain. Shy distrust is seen as base, and it scorns anyone who desires oaths instead of trustful looks and handshakes, as well as all forms of excessive, distrustful wisdom, for they are the ways of cowardly souls. Even baser in its eyes is the obsequious and dog-like person who immediately lies on their back, the submissive one. There is also a submissive, dog-like, pious, and obsequious wisdom, which it finds loathsome. It despises with all its being the one who never defends themselves, who swallows poisonous insults and bad looks, the overly patient one, the all-enduring, the all-satisfied, for these are the traits of slaves. Whether they are servile before gods and divine disdain, or before men and foolish human opinions, it spits upon all types of slaves, this blessed selfishness. Bad is the word it uses for all who are spirit-broken and servile, those with downcast eyes, heavy hearts, and a falsely submissive manner that kisses with broad, cowardly lips. And it labels as false wisdom all the cleverness affected by slaves, the hoary-headed and weary ones, especially all the cunning, feigned cleverness, and foolish curiosity of priests. The false wise, the priests, the world-weary, and those with souls of a feminine and servile nature, how they have abused selfishness in their games. And precisely that was meant to be virtue and called virtue, to abuse selfishness, and they wish to be selfless for a reason, all those world-weary cowards and cross-spiders. But now comes the day, the change, the sword of judgment, the great noontide. Many things shall be revealed, and he who proclaims the ego as wholesome and holy and selfishness as blessed, he, the prophet, speaks what he knows. Behold, it is coming, it is near, the great noontide. Thus spoke Zarathustra.
In this chapter, Zarathustra reflects on three concepts traditionally considered vices: voluptuousness, the passion for power, and selfishness. By metaphorically weighing them on his scales, Zarathustra explores the complex and contradictory nature of these evils, revealing that what is condemned by common morality can be reinterpreted as virtues depending on the perspective from which they are viewed. Voluptuousness, often associated with lust and physical desire, is rejected by ascetics and the morally rigid as something sinful and corrupting. To the common people, it is seen as a consuming fire that leads to decay. However, Zarathustra sees it differently. For the free spirits, it represents earthly joy, gratitude, and a higher form of happiness. He argues that, in the right hands, it is not a degradation of the self, but a celebration of life's beauty, a manifestation of deeper connections and aspirations beyond mere physical pleasure. The passion for power, which society denounces as ruthless ambition, is, for Zarathustra, a driving force that can either destroy or elevate. It has the potential to crush falsehood and hollow structures, to expose weakness, and to drive humanity toward greatness. However, this force can also corrupt and humiliate when wielded poorly. It becomes a scourge when tied to vanity or greed, reducing the powerful to petty tyrants. But in its highest form, the passion for power is what propels the strong to lift themselves and others, embodying Zarathustra's ideal of the bestowing virtue, a power that seeks not dominance but to give generously from its overflow. Selfishness, often vilified as the root of immorality, is perhaps the most strikingly reinterpreted of the three. Zarathustra praises what he calls blessed selfishness, a selfishness that springs from a strong, healthy soul, one that takes joy in its own being and radiates outward. Such selfishness is not about hoarding or harming others. It is about self-affirmation, the fullness of one's own existence, and the creation of values that reflect this self-mastery. This noble form of selfishness rejects the slavish virtues of meekness and self-denial. It despises those who, under the guise of humility, degrade themselves and others. Zarathustra sees true virtue in the self-sufficient individual who embodies strength, trust, and freedom. In essence, Nietzsche uses this chapter to turn conventional morality on its head. The three evil things are only harmful when misused or misunderstood. When approached with strength and wisdom, they are sources of vitality, joy, and the foundation of a life-affirming philosophy. Zarathustra's reinterpretation challenges us to look beyond moral labels and see the deeper value within what society hastily condemns. His vision hints at a new era, the Great Noontide, when humanity will embrace these supposed vices as essential to living fully, deeply, and powerfully. Through this, Nietzsche calls for a re-evaluation of values, pushing us to find strength and virtue even in what has been deemed most dangerous. Chapter 55, The Spirit of Gravity. The Three Evil Things, Weighing the World, Voluptuousness, Passion for Power, and Selfishness. My way of speaking is coarse and hearty, meant for the common people. I speak too crudely and cordially for delicate creatures like Angora rabbits. My words sound even stranger to all the inkfish and pen foxes. My hand is like that of a fool. Woe to all tables, walls, and any surface that can be used for a fool's doodling and scribbling. My foot is like that of a horse. I trot and trample over obstacles, race across fields, and take immense joy in fast running. My stomach might as well be that of an eagle. It craves lamb's flesh, and it feels like the stomach of a bird, nourished by simple things, always ready to take flight. Perhaps there's something of bird-like nature within me. And above all, my hostility toward the force of gravity is like the nature of a bird. I am truly, deeply, and originally opposed to it. My hostility has flown far and wide to places you can't even imagine. I could sing a song about it, and I will sing it, even if I'm alone in an empty house and have to sing it just for my own ears. There are other singers, of course, whose voices soften only in a full house, whose hands become eloquent, whose eyes become expressive, and whose hearts awaken only when surrounded by an audience. But I am not like them. The Spirit of Gravity, Embracing Self-Love, Burdens, and the Art of Discovery. He who will one day teach humanity to fly will have changed all boundaries. Even the landmarks themselves will take flight. He will christen the earth anew as the light body. The ostrich can run faster than the swiftest horse, yet it thrusts its head heavily into the weighty earth. So it is with the person who cannot yet fly. Earth and life weigh heavily upon them, and this is the will of the Spirit of Gravity. But the one who wishes to become light, to become a bird, must love oneself. This is what I teach. Not, of course, with the love of the sick and corrupted, for self-love stinks among them. One must learn to love oneself with a wholesome and healthy love, so that one can endure one's own company and not wander aimlessly. Such aimless wandering is often called brotherly love, but these words have been used for deception and falsehood, especially by those who have been burdensome to others. Learning to love oneself is not a commandment for today or tomorrow. It is the finest, most subtle, enduring, and patient of arts. To its possessor, all possessions remain well concealed, and one's own treasure is the last to be unearthed, as the Spirit of Gravity decrees. From almost the cradle, we are given heavy words and values like good and evil. This is the dowry we inherit, and for the sake of it, we are forgiven for living. Hence, people allow little children to come to them, early on instructing them not to love themselves, as dictated by the Spirit of Gravity. Thus, we bear our burdens obediently on our strong shoulders, even over rugged mountains. When we sweat, people say, yes, life is hard to bear. But it is humanity itself that is hard to bear, for we carry too many external things upon our shoulders. Like camels, we kneel down and allow ourselves to be heavily laden. Especially the strong, burden-bearing individuals, those with reverence within them, load themselves with numerous heavy words and values.
Life then appears to them as a desert. Verily, many things within ourselves are hard to bear, and many internal aspects of a person are like oysters, repulsive, slippery, and difficult to grasp. They require an elegant shell with adornments to plead for them. This is an art that must be learned, having a shell, a fine appearance, and a wise blindness. This art deceives people about many things within themselves. Many a shell is poor and pitiable, and there is too much of it. Much concealed goodness and power remain undiscovered. The most exquisite delicacies find no takers. Women understand this well, the choicest among them, sometimes a bit plumper, sometimes a bit leaner. How much destiny lies in such small differences. Man is difficult to understand, and most difficult to himself. Often, the spirit misrepresents the soul. This is the work of the spirit of gravity. However, the one who has discovered themselves is the one who says, "This is my good and evil." In doing so, they silence the mole and the dwarf who proclaim, "Good for all, evil for all." Indeed, I do not like those who call everything good and declare this world to be the best of all worlds. I call them the all-satisfied. Complete contentment, which is satisfied with everything, is not the best taste. I admire the stubborn, discerning tongues and stomachs that have learned to say "I" and "yes" and "no." To consume and digest everything, however, is the true swine nature. To always say "yes" is the trait of the donkey and its kind. My taste desires deep yellow and hot red. It mixes blood with all colors. But those who whitewash their souls with false purity are repugnant to me. Some fall in love with mummies, others with phantoms, both hostile to flesh and blood. I, however, love blood. I shall not dwell where everyone spits and vomits. I would rather live among thieves and perjurers. No one carries gold in their mouth. Even more repugnant to me are sycophants. The most repugnant human animal I've found I call a parasite. It refuses to love, yet seeks to live off of love. Unhappy are those with only one choice, to become evil beasts or beast-tamers. I would not build my abode among such. I also learned patience, but only in waiting for myself. Above all, I learned to stand, walk, run, climb, and dance. My teaching is this: he who wishes to fly one day must first learn to stand, walk, run, climb, and dance. One does not fly into flying. I learned to reach high windows with rope ladders and climb tall masts. Sitting on high masts of perception was a great pleasure to me, a small light, but a great comfort to castaways and shipwrecked souls. I arrived at my truth through various paths and winding routes, not by a single ladder leading to the heights where my gaze reaches into the distance. I only reluctantly asked for directions. It always went against my taste. Instead, I questioned and examined the paths themselves. My journey was one of testing and questioning, and one must also learn to respond to such questioning. That, however, is my taste, neither good nor bad, but my own, of which I have no shame or secrecy. This is my way. Where is yours? I answered those who asked me about the way. For the way does not exist. Thus spoke Zarathustra.
This chapter is a meditation on overcoming the burdens that weigh down the human spirit and the need to transcend the spirit of gravity, which Nietzsche sees as the force that makes life heavy, rigid, and defined by external values. Zarathustra introduces three evil things that contribute to the heaviness of life: voluptuousness, passion for power, and selfishness. He critiques these traits not in themselves, but for how they manifest under the oppressive spirit of gravity, transforming them into corrupt, base desires. Nietzsche contrasts his vision of a light, soaring existence with the heavy, earthbound nature of those who cling to conventional values and conformist thinking. Using vivid imagery, he describes himself as bird-like, striving to transcend the weight that anchors most people to the ground. His animosity toward gravity symbolizes his deeper opposition to conformity, pessimism, and self-denial. To resist this gravity, one must learn to love oneself in a healthy, genuine way, not through sickly self-indulgence, but through self-mastery and a refusal to be burdened by the expectations and moral judgments of others. Zarathustra's critique extends to the moral concepts of good and evil, which are portrayed as chains placed on individuals by society, making them camels that bear these external burdens instead of creating their own values. Nietzsche believes that such inherited values suppress individuality and the potential to achieve greatness. Thus, Zarathustra teaches that one must learn to discover and define personal values, saying, "This is my good and evil," instead of accepting universal moralities dictated by the dwarfs and moles of society. In opposition to the spirit of gravity, Zarathustra embraces the metaphor of flight, describing the path to self-overcoming as a progression. First learning to stand, then walk, run, climb, and eventually dance. Flying, the ultimate goal, represents complete liberation from external constraints and the mastery of one's own being. Nietzsche emphasizes that this journey is not straightforward. There is no single path or set way. The process of self-overcoming involves winding roads, exploration, and an unyielding spirit of questioning. The chapter's overarching message is about rejecting false contentment and embracing life's struggles joyfully. Nietzsche admires those with discerning tastes who can say yes and no with strength and clarity, instead of mindlessly accepting all as good or bowing to mediocrity. True self-love and strength lie in resisting the oppressive gravity of societal norms, values, and conventional thinking, forging a path of one's own making. For Nietzsche, to become light and to fly means breaking free from the spirit of gravity and embodying a life of creativity, independence, and authenticity.
Chapter 56, Old and New Tables. The Waiting Game, a search for signs. Here I sit and wait, surrounded by old broken tablets and new half-written ones. When will my time come? The hour of my descent, my return to humanity. I wait for that moment when the signs reveal to me that it is indeed my time, specifically, the laughing lion with a flock of doves. In the meantime, I converse with myself as someone who has the luxury of time. No one brings me new information, so I recount my own story to myself. Disrupting the delusions of morality. When I came among humans, I found them deeply entrenched in an old delusion. They all believed they already knew what was good and bad for humanity. They regarded discussions about virtue as tiresome and found solace in talking about good and bad before going to sleep, as if it was a ritual to ensure a peaceful slumber. I disrupted this slumber by teaching that no one truly knows what is good and bad unless it is the Creator himself. It is the Creator who defines humanity's purpose and gives meaning and direction to the world. Only He has the power to determine what is good or bad. I encourage them to overturn their old, established beliefs, especially those of the moralists, saints, poets, and saviors. I urge them to mock their solemn philosophers and anyone who sat as a grim scarecrow on the tree of life, offering admonitions. I position myself on their grand, solemn paths, even beside the carrion and vultures, and I laughed at the fading glory of their past. I jeered at both their greatness and their smallness, feeling disappointed that their best and worst were so trivial. Thus, I laughed heartily. My wise longing, born in the mountains, echoed within me, a wild wisdom indeed. It would often carry me away, filling me with sun-intoxicated ecstasy, and I would soar like an arrow into distant futures that no dream had ever glimpsed. I journeyed to warmer lands than any sculptor could imagine, where gods danced without shame, unburdened by clothes. I speak in parables, and I am ashamed that I must still be a poet. In this place, I saw all becoming as the dance of gods, a joyous and uninhibited reunion. Time appeared as a delightful mockery of moments, where necessity embodied freedom, playing joyfully with the goad of liberty. Here I encountered my old adversary, the spirit of gravity, and all its creations, rules, laws, necessity, consequences, purposes, will, good and evil. For must there not be something that is danced over and beyond? Must there not, for the sake of the agile and nimblest, be moles and clumsy dwarfs? The Zarathustra word, teaching a new noontide. There, I encountered the word Superman on the path, the idea that man is something to be surpassed. Man is a bridge, not a final destination, rejoicing in his noontides and evenings as he advances towards new rosy dawns. I spread the Zarathustra word of the great noontide, and much more, like purple evening afterglows, over humanity. I introduced new stars and new nights to their awareness, casting laughter like a colorful canopy over cloud and day and night. I taught them my art of poetization and aspiration, to compose and unite the fragments within themselves, solving the riddles and embracing the uncertain chances of life. As composers, riddle solvers, and redeemers of chance, I encouraged them to create the future and transform the past until their will proclaimed, "So did I will it, so shall I will it." This I called redemption, and this was the only form of redemption I taught them to recognize. Now I await my own redemption, so that I may go to them one last time, for I will go to humanity once more, and my sun will set among them. In my dying, I will bestow upon them my most precious gift. I learned this from the sun. As it sets, the exuberant sun pours its gold into the sea from its boundless riches. Even the poorest fisherman rows with golden oars. I once witnessed this, and tears flowed from my eyes in awe. Like the sun, Zarathustra too will go down. Now he sits here and waits, surrounded by old broken tablets and new half-written ones, for his final descent. Surpassing the self, a noble aspiration. Behold, here is a new tablet, but where are my brothers who will carry it with me to the valley and into the hearts of flesh? This is the demand of my great love for the remotest ones. Do not be overly considerate of your neighbor. Man is something that must be surpassed. There are many different ways and methods of surpassing. Explore them, but only a fool thinks man can also be completely surpassed. Surpass yourself even in your neighbor, and do not allow a right that you can seize to be given to you. What you do, no one can do to you in return. There is no repayment. He who cannot control himself shall be obedient, and many can control themselves but still lack self-obedience. Noble souls, and the principle of contribution. This is the aspiration of noble souls. They don't desire to receive anything for free, especially not life itself. Those who belong to the common masses wish to live without any effort, but those of us to whom life has been given, we are always thinking about what we can best give in return. Indeed, it's a noble principle that says, what life promises us, we shall promise back to life. We should not seek enjoyment where we don't contribute to the joy, and we shouldn't even wish for enjoyment. Enjoyment and innocence are both very modest things. They don't like to be pursued. We should possess them, but we should seek out guilt and pain instead. The firstborn sacrifice, bleeding for greatness. Oh, my brothers, the firstborn is always sacrificed, and now we are the firstborn. We all bleed on secret sacrificial altars, burning and suffering in honor of ancient idols. Our youthfulness is still fresh, which excites the taste of the old. Our best is still young, and this excites the palates of the elderly. Our flesh is tender, our skin is like that of lambs. How could we not stir the desires of the old idol priests? The old idol priest still dwells within us, roasting our best offerings for his feast. Ah, my brothers, how can the firstborn not be sacrifices? But this is what our nature desires, and I love those who don't wish to preserve themselves. I love those who are on the path of descent with all my heart, for they go beyond. The rarity of truth. Embracing the bad conscience. To be truthful, that is a rarity, and those who can be rarely choose to be. Least of all, goodness and truth are companions. Oh, those who are considered good. Good people seldom speak the truth, for a spirit to be deemed good is seen as an affliction. The good ones yield and submit themselves, their hearts repeat and their souls obey. But the one who obeys does not truly listen to themselves. Everything that the good label as evil must come together for one truth to be born. My brothers, are you also wicked enough for this truth? The audacious venture, the prolonged skepticism, the harsh denial, the tedium, the cutting to the core, how seldom do these qualities converge? Yet it is from such soil that truth emerges. Throughout history, knowledge has grown alongside the bad conscience, so dismantle the old tables, you discerning ones. The flux of everything, challenges to stability. When there are planks and gangways spanning the water, when railings line the stream, it's hard to convince anyone that everything is in flux. Even the simpletons argue against it, saying, "What do you mean everything in flux? Planks and railings are still over the stream. Over the stream, everything is stable, including the values of things, the bridges, and the foundations of good and evil. These things are all stable." But when the harsh winter comes, when the stream freezes over, even the wisest among us start to doubt. And indeed, not just the simpletons, but everyone begins to question, shouldn't everything stand still? Fundamentally, everything stands still. That's a comforting winter doctrine, a source of solace for the unproductive season, a great comfort for those hibernating by the fireside. Fundamentally, everything stands still, but in contrast, the thawing wind preaches otherwise. The thawing wind, like an untamed bull, not a ploughing bull, but a furious destroyer with angry horns, breaks the ice, and when it breaks, gangways and railings fall into the water. Oh, my brothers, isn't everything in flux right now? Have all the railings and gangways not fallen into the water? Who would still cling to notions of good and evil? Woe to us, hail to us, the thawing wind is blowing. This is the message my brothers should proclaim through the streets. The illusion of good and evil, seeking true knowledge. There exists an ancient illusion. It goes by the names of good and evil. Soothsayers and astrologers have often been at the center of this illusion. In the past, people used to believe in soothsayers and astrologers, and thus they believed in fate. You shall, because you must. Then, there came a time when people distrusted all soothsayers and astrologers, leading to the belief that everything is freedom. You can, because you will. My brothers and sisters, when it comes to the stars and the future, there has only been illusion, not true knowledge. Therefore, when it comes to good and evil, there has also been nothing but illusion, not true knowledge. The sacred commandments, are they truly holy? You shall not steal, you shall not kill. Such commandments were once deemed sacred. People would bow down, lower their heads, and remove their shoes before these precepts. But let me ask you this. Have there ever been better thieves and killers in the world than those who upheld these holy commandments? Isn't there, in the essence of life itself, an element of stealing and killing? And by labeling such precepts as holy, was not truth itself thereby sacrificed? Or was it a sermon of death that declared holy what contradicted and discouraged life? Oh, my brothers, shatter, shatter for me the old tablets. Embracing the past, shaping a new nobility. I sympathize with the past, and I see that it has been abandoned, left to the whims, spirit, and madness of each generation that comes and interprets it as their bridge to the future. A great ruler might arise, a cunning prodigy, who can both approve and disapprove, shaping and constraining the past until it becomes a bridge, a harbinger, a herald, and a rooster's crow. But there is another danger, and my sympathy lies elsewhere. Those who belong to the common people often look back to their grandparents, and for them, time ends with their grandparents. Thus, the entire past is abandoned because the common people might one day rise to power and drown all of history in shallow waters. Therefore, my brothers, we need a new nobility, one that will oppose both the rule of the common people and the rulers. This new nobility will redefine what it means to be noble on fresh tablets. We need many noble individuals, each with their unique qualities, for the emergence of a new nobility. Or, as I once said in a parable, true divinity lies in the existence of gods, not a single god. A new nobility, creators of the future. O my brothers, I consecrate you and direct you towards a new nobility. You shall become creators, cultivators, and sowers of the future. Not the nobility that can be bought and sold like traders with their gold, for all that can be priced is of little value. Your honor shall no longer come from where you come, but from where you are going. Your will and your feet that seek to surpass you, let these be your new sources of honor. It is not an honor that you have served a prince, for what worth do princes hold now? Nor that you have become a support for the existing order to make it stand more firmly. It is not an honor that your family has become courtly at the royal courts, where standing for long hours is deemed a virtue, for all courtiers believe that sitting is a privilege in the afterlife. It is not even an honor that a Holy Spirit led your ancestors to promised lands, a notion I do not commend. Where the worst of all trees the cross grew, there is nothing to praise. And wherever this Holy Spirit led its knights, goats and geese, misfits and buffoons, always took the lead. O my brothers, your nobility shall not look backward but outward. You shall be exiles from all ancestral lands. Love the land of your children. Let this love be your new nobility, the uncharted territories in the farthest seas. I bid your sails to search for this land and explore it. You shall make amends for being the children of your fathers to your own children. You shall redeem the past in this way. I present to you this new mandate. The pursuit of enjoyment and innocence. Why should one live? Everything is futile. To live is to beat straw. To live is to burn oneself and yet not feel warm. Such ancient ramblings are still considered wisdom because of their age, even though they smell musty. Even mold can be considered noble. Children might speak in this manner, avoiding fire because it has burned them. There is much childishness in the old books of wisdom, and why should someone who continually beats straw be allowed to criticize thrashing? Such a fool ought to be silenced. These individuals sit at the table and contribute nothing, not even a hearty appetite, and then they complain, everything is futile. But my brothers, eating and drinking well is truly an art. Let us break apart the tables of those who never find joy. Unclean spirits and the filthy monster. People say, to the clean, all things are clean. But I say to you, to the swinish, all things become swinish. Therefore the visionaries and those with bowed heads, whose hearts are also bowed down, preach that the world itself is a filthy monster. These are all unclean spirits, especially those who have no peace or rest unless they see the world from its darkest side, the Backworldsmen. I say this openly, even if it sounds unpleasant. The world is like a man in that it has a dark side. This is true. There is indeed much filth in the world. This is also true. But the world itself is not therefore a filthy monster. There is wisdom in the fact that much in the world has a foul odor. Disgust itself gives rise to wings and the ability to discover fountains of purity. Even in the best, there is still something to be disgusted with, and the best is always something that must be surpassed. O my brothers, there is wisdom in the fact that there is much filth in the world. Renouncing the world, a message of Backworldsmen. I heard such sayings from devout Backworldsmen, and truly they spoke without wickedness or deceit, although there is nothing more deceitful or wicked in the world. Let the world be as it is, do not lift a finger against it. Let those who wish oppress, harm, and exploit the people. Do not lift a finger against them. In doing so, they will learn to renounce the world. And your own reason, stifle and suppress it, for it is a product of this world. In doing so, you will learn to renounce the world. My brothers, let us shatter, let us tear apart those old tablets of the devout. Let us shred the maxims of those who despise the world. The new doctrine, overcoming weariness. He who learns much unlearns all violent cravings. These words are whispered among people in the dark alleys now. Wisdom is wearisome, nothing is worth pursuing, you shall not crave. This new doctrine I found even hanging in public markets. Break it up for me, my brothers, break up this new doctrine. It was set up by the weary of the world, the preachers of death, and the jailers. It preaches slavery, for they learned poorly, not the best, and they learned everything too soon and too hastily. They also ate poorly, and this resulted in their ruined stomachs. A ruined stomach is a reflection of their spirit. It leads to thoughts of death. Truly, my brothers, the spirit is connected to the stomach. Life is a wellspring of delight, but to those in whom the ruined stomach speaks, the source of all joy becomes tainted. Their spirit becomes the father of affliction. To discern is a delight for those with the will of a lion, but for the weary they are merely willed by external forces, and they are tossed about by every wave. This is the nature of weak men. They lose their way and eventually ask in their weariness, why did we ever embark on this journey? Everything is indifferent. To them it sounds pleasant to hear, nothing is worth pursuing, you shall not desire. But this is a sermon of slavery. O my brothers, Zarathustra comes like a fresh, invigorating wind to all those who are weary of their paths. He will make many noses sneeze. My free breath blows even through walls and into prisons and the hearts of those imprisoned. Willing liberates, for willing is creating. That's what I teach. And you shall learn to create, and you shall learn to learn, only from me, and you shall learn it well. He who has ears, let him hear. Boarding the boat of death, facing challenges. There stands the boat, ready to cross, perhaps into vast nothingness. But who among you is willing to enter into this perhaps? None of you desire to board the boat of death. How can you be world-weary then? World-weary, yet you have not withdrawn from the earth. I have always found you eager for the world, still enamored of your own weariness of the world. Your lips may hang down, but a small worldly desire still lingers there, and in your eyes is there not a faint trace of earthly bliss, never forgotten? On this earth there are many good inventions, some practical, some pleasurable. It is for the sake of these inventions that the earth deserves to be loved. Many such inventions are like a woman's breasts, both useful and delightful. But you, world-weary ones, earth-idlers, it is as if you need a wake-up call. Someone should whip you into action and restore vitality to your limbs. If you are not invalids or feeble creatures whom the earth is tired of, then you are cunning sluggards or delicate pleasure-seeking cats. And if you refuse to run joyfully once more, then you shall fade away.
One should not try to cure the incurable, as Zarathustra teaches. Thus, you shall pass away. But remember, it takes more courage to bring about an end than to create a new verse. This wisdom is known to all physicians and poets alike. Beware the parasite, a cautionary tale. My brothers, there are tables that weariness has crafted, and there are tables that laziness has crafted, corrupt laziness. Although they may sound similar, they seek to be heard differently. Look at this weary one. He is only a hand's breadth away from his goal, yet due to weariness, he has stubbornly laid down in the dust, this courageous soul. He yawns at the path, the earth, the goal, and even at himself out of sheer weariness. He refuses to take another step, this valiant one. Now the sun shines upon him, and dogs lick his sweat, but he remains obstinate, choosing to languish. Just a hand's breadth away from his goal, he prefers to languish. Truly, you may have to drag him by the hair of his head to his own heaven, this hero. Perhaps it is better to let him lie where he has lain down, so that sleep may come to him as a comforter, with refreshing rain. Let him rest until he awakens on his own, until he rejects weariness and what weariness has taught him. But my friends, make sure to scare away the dogs, the idle scavengers, and all the swarming parasites, the cultured vermin, who feast on the sweat of every hero. The coming of new peoples, seeking new beginnings. I create circles around me and sacred boundaries, and fewer ascend the higher mountains with me. I construct a range of ever holier mountains. But be cautious, my brothers, wherever you intend to ascend with me, lest a parasite ascends with you. A parasite is like a reptile, a creeping and cringing creature that seeks to thrive on your weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Its art lies in discerning when ascending souls are weary, and it builds its repugnant nest in your troubles, dejection, and sensitive modesty. Where the strong appear weak, where the noble are overly gentle, there the parasite builds its loathsome nest. It thrives where the great have small weaknesses. What is the highest form of being, and what is the lowest? The parasite is the lowest form, and the one of the highest species feeds the most parasites. The soul with the longest ladder, capable of delving deepest within itself, is bound to attract the most parasites. The most expansive soul, which can roam freely within itself and embrace chance, is a fertile ground. The soul existing in being, delving into becoming, the possessing soul in pursuit of desire and longing, the soul escaping from itself and overtaking itself in a wide circuit, the wisest soul charmed by the sweet words of folly, and the most self-loving soul where everything flows and counterflows. How can the loftiest soul not attract the worst parasites? The dangers of the good and just. O my brothers, am I then cruel? But I say, what is destined to fall, let it fall. Everything of today is destined to fall and decay. Who would want to preserve it? But I also wish to push it. Do you know the joy of rolling stones into steep abysses? See how those people of today roll into my depths. I am a prelude to better players. O my brothers, an example, follow my example. And for those you don't teach to fly, I implore you, teach them to fall faster. Earning one's bread, challenges and growth. I admire the courageous, but being a swordsman alone is not enough. One must also know when and where to wield their swordsmanship. Sometimes it takes greater bravery to remain silent and walk away, reserving one's strength for a worthier adversary. You should only have foes worthy of your disdain, not foes to be despised. You should take pride in your adversaries, as I have taught before. Reserve yourselves for the worthier foe, my brothers, and be prepared to pass by many others, especially the noisy rabble who incessantly argue about people and nations. Keep your perspective clear of their endless debates. There is both right and wrong in their arguments, and merely observing them can stir anger. Viewing and arguing are one and the same in this regard. Instead, retreat to the forests and sheathe your sword. Go your own way, and let the people and nations go theirs, even if their paths seem bleak and devoid of hope. Let the merchants rule where all that glitters is their gold. The age of kings has passed, and what now calls itself the people is unworthy of kingship. Observe how these nations behave like traders, seeking the smallest advantage in any situation. They set traps for each other and extract benefits from one another in the name of good neighborliness. Oh, how blessed was the distant time when a nation proclaimed, "I will be the master over other nations." For my brothers, the best should rule, and the best desires to rule. Wherever the teaching differs, it is because the best is absent. The courage to retreat, choosing worthier adversaries. If they were given bread for nothing, alas, what would they complain about?
Their sustenance is their true source of amusement, and they shall earn it the hard way. They are like predators. In their work, there is even looting. In their earning, there is even deceit. Therefore, they shall face challenges. By facing these challenges, they may become better predators, more cunning, more human-like. For man is the greatest predator of all. Man has already taken away the virtues of all other animals. That's why it has been a challenge for man. Only the birds remain beyond his reach, and if man were to learn how to fly, alas, to what heights would his greed soar? The meaning of man and woman, dancing minds and bodies. This is how I envision man and woman, one fit for war, the other fit for motherhood. Both, however, fit for dancing with their minds and bodies. And may the day be considered lost if we haven't danced a measure. Let every truth be deemed false if it hasn't been accompanied by laughter. Arranged marriages, caution and compatibility. Be cautious in arranging your marriages. Ensure it's not a hasty arrangement. Rushed marriages can lead to marriage breaking. And it's better to break a badly arranged marriage than to bend or lie within it. A woman once told me, "I broke the marriage, but first, the marriage broke me." I've observed that poorly matched couples tend to be the most vengeful. They make everyone suffer for the mistakes of their union. That's why I advise honest individuals to say to each other, "We love each other. Let's make sure we maintain our love, should our commitment be misguided. Let's set a small term and a modest marriage to see if we're compatible for a larger commitment. It's essential always to be a compatible pair." This is my advice to all honest individuals, and it aligns with my love for the Superman and all that is to come. The institution of marriage should not only propagate, but elevate us upwards. May the garden of marriage aid you in this endeavor, my brothers. Seeking new springs, the earthquake of progress. He who has gained wisdom about ancient origins will, in the end, seek the sources of the future and new beginnings. Oh, my brothers, it won't be long until new peoples arise, and new springs rush down into new depths. The earthquake may block many wells and cause much suffering, but it also reveals inner powers and secrets. The earthquake uncovers new springs. In the earthquakes of old civilizations, new fountains burst forth, and whoever proclaims, "Here is a well for many thirsty souls, one heart for many yearning ones, one will for many instruments," gathers around him a people consisting of many who dare to attempt. Who can command? Who must obey? That is what is being attempted. Ah, with what long searching, solving, failing, learning, and retrying. Human society, it's an attempt as I teach, a long search. However, it seeks a ruler. An attempt, my brothers, and not a contract. I implore you, abolish that word of the soft-hearted and indecisive. The danger of the good and just, breaking free. Oh, my brothers, who poses the greatest danger to the entire future of humanity? Is it not the good and just? They are the ones who declare, "We already know what is good and just. We possess it. Woe to those who still seek it." And whatever harm the wicked may do, the harm caused by the good is the most harmful. Into the hearts of the good and just, someone once looked and said, "They are the Pharisees." But people didn't understand him. The good and just themselves were unable to comprehend him, as their spirit was confined within their good conscience. The foolishness of the good is profoundly wise. It is the truth that the good must be like Pharisees. They have no other choice. The good must crucify those who create their own virtues. That is the truth. The second person who discovered the land, heart and soil of the good and just, asked, "Whom do they hate the most?" They hate the Creator the most, the one who breaks the tablets and old values, the disruptor. They call him the lawbreaker. Because the good cannot create, they are always the beginning of the end. They crucify the one who writes new values on new tablets. They sacrifice the future to themselves. They crucify the entire human future. The good have always been the beginning of the end. Breaking free, the great terror and sickness. My brothers, have you also grasped the meaning of this word? And do you remember what I once said about the last man? Where does the greatest danger to the entire human future lie? Is it not with the good and just? Break up, I implore you, the ranks of the good and just. Oh, my brothers, have you also understood this word? Why so soft? Become hard. Are you running away from me? Are you frightened? Does this word terrify you? Oh, my brothers, when I told you to break free from the concept of the good and the tables of the good, I set mankind on a course for the high seas. And now, only now, do you face the great terror, the great prospect, the great sickness, the great nausea, the great seasickness. The concept of the good taught you false shores and false security. You were born and raised in the lies of the good. Everything has been twisted and distorted by the concept of the good. But he who discovered the realm of man also discovered the realm of man's future. Now, be sailors for me, brave and patient. Prepare yourselves, my brothers, learn to prepare yourselves. The sea is stormy, and many seek to rise by your efforts. The sea is stormy, and everything is in the sea. Well, take heart, you old sailor hearts. What about the homeland? Our helm is set for the land where our children's future lies. There, our great longing storms forward, more turbulent than the sea. Becoming hard, the path of creators. Why so hard? Asked the charcoal of the diamond one day. Aren't we close relatives? Why so soft, my brothers? That's what I ask you. Aren't you, my brothers? Why so soft, so submissive and yielding? Why is there so much negation and self-denial in your hearts? Why is there so little determination in your gaze? And if you won't become forces and unyielding ones, how can you ever conquer with me? And if your hardness won't gleam and cut and shape, how can you ever create with me? Because creators are hard, and it must seem like a blessing to you to mold millennia as if they were wax. A blessing to write upon the will of millennia as if it were brass, harder than brass, nobler than brass. Only the noblest is truly hard. I set up this new table over you, my brothers. Become hard. Protecting the will, a will for great triumph. Oh, my will, you who transform every necessity, my necessity, protect me from petty triumphs. You, the destiny of my soul, which I call fate, you within me, above me, preserve and spare me for one great destiny, and your final greatness, my will, spare it for your last triumph, so that you may be unyielding in your victory. Ah, who hasn't succumbed to their own victories, whose eyes haven't dimmed in this intoxicated twilight, whose steps haven't faltered and forgotten how to stand in the face of victory, so that one day I may be prepared and mature for the great noon, ready and mature like glowing ore, a cloud carrying lightning and a swelling milk udder, ready for myself and for my most hidden will, a bow eager for its arrow, an arrow eager for its star, a star prepared and mature for its noon, glowing, pierced, blessed by the annihilating arrows of the sun, a sun itself and an unyielding sun will, ready for annihilation in victory. O will, you who change every necessity, my necessity, spare me for one great triumph. Thus spoke Zarathustra.
In chapter 56, Zarathustra meditates on the transition between the old and new moralities represented by the tables of values that govern human life. He is caught between the destruction of obsolete values and the creation of new ones, symbolized by the broken old tablets and the half-written new ones around him. As he awaits a sign, the laughing lion with a flock of doves, he reflects on his mission, to inspire humanity to move beyond current ideals toward new ones. Zarathustra critiques established moralities, which he sees as stifling true human potential. He deconstructs traditional concepts of good and evil, asserting that these categories have been defined by those who wish to impose control rather than encourage growth. In contrast, he calls for a new morality that encourages the individual to surpass themselves, embracing life's flux and chaos rather than clinging to outdated values that have lost their meaning. A central idea in this chapter is that of surpassing. Zarathustra insists that man is a bridge, not an end, and must constantly strive to overcome his limitations. This new path requires rejecting the comfort of the good and just and embracing the uncertain future. Zarathustra's vision of the Übermensch, one who creates new values and shapes the future, is not just an individual achievement, but a new nobility that stands against both the stagnation of the past and the mediocrity of the present. Throughout the chapter, Zarathustra warns against complacency and urges his followers to be courageous enough to break old moral tables and write new ones. He sees the good as the greatest threat, because they resist change, crucifying those who seek to create new values. For Nietzsche, the truly noble soul is one who sacrifices itself, constantly striving for greatness without succumbing to the comfort of easy truths or dogma. In the end, Zarathustra's message is clear. The old values must be shattered, and new ones must be created by those strong enough to bear the weight of this responsibility. This new nobility is tasked not with preserving the past, but with redeeming it by shaping a future filled with vitality, creativity, and self-overcoming.
Chapter 57. The Convalescent. Zarathustra's Awakening, a cry that shook the world. One morning, shortly after returning to his cave, Zarathustra suddenly jumped up from his bed like a madman. He cried out with a terrifying voice, as if someone still lay on the bed refusing to rise. Zarathustra's voice was so loud that it frightened his animals, and creatures from neighboring caves and hiding places hurriedly fled, some flying, some fluttering, some creeping, and others leaping, depending on their mode of locomotion. Zarathustra spoke these words. Arise, profound thought from the depths. I am your rooster and the morning dawn, you oversleeping reptile. Get up, my voice will soon crow you awake. Unshackle the bonds from your ears and listen. I want to hear you. Get up, there is thunder enough to make even the graves listen, and rub away the sleep, the dimness, and the blindness from your eyes. Listen to me with your eyes too. My voice is a remedy even for those born blind. Once you are awake, you shall remain awake forever. It is not my custom to awaken great-grandmothers from their sleep just to tell them to go back to sleep. You're stirring, stretching, and wheezing. Get up, you shall not wheeze, but speak to me. Zarathustra calls you, Zarathustra the godless. I, Zarathustra, the advocate of life, the advocate of suffering, the advocate of the eternal return, call upon you my deepest thought. Joy to me, you come, I hear you. My abyss speaks. I have brought my lowest depth into the light. Joy to me, come here, give me your hand. Ha, let go. Aha, disgust, alas, woe is me. The Convalescent, Zarathustra's path to healing and song. Hardly had Zarathustra spoken these words when he fell down as if dead and remained in that state for a long time. When he finally came to himself, he was pale and trembling, and he continued to lie down without eating or drinking for a long time. This condition lasted for 7 days, and his animals never left his side, except for the eagle, which went out to fetch food. It would bring back food and place it on Zarathustra's bed, so that he was surrounded by yellow and red berries, grapes, rosy apples, sweet-smelling herbs, and pine cones. At his feet, 2 lambs lay stretched out, which the eagle had taken from their shepherds. After 7 days, Zarathustra finally raised himself up, took a rosy apple in his hand, smelled it, and found its fragrance pleasing. It was then that his animals thought it was time to speak to him. "O Zarathustra," they said, "you have been lying here with heavy eyes for 7 days. Will you not rise again? Step out of your cave. The world is waiting for you like a garden. The wind plays with fragrances that seek you, and all streams want to flow after you. Everything longs for you since you have been alone for 7 days. Step out of your cave. Everything wants to be your healer. Did a new knowledge, a bitter and grievous knowledge, perhaps come to you? You lay there like leavened dough, and your soul rose and expanded beyond its limits." Zarathustra replied, "O my animals, continue to speak like this, for it refreshes me to hear your words. Where there is talk, there is the world as a garden for me. How delightful it is that there are words and sounds. Are not words and sounds like rainbows and bridges between the eternally separated? To each soul there is another world, and to each soul every other soul is a distant world. Among the most similar, resemblance deceives most delightfully, for the smallest gap is the most difficult to bridge. How could there be an outside of me? There is no outside. But we forget this when we hear sounds. It is so refreshing to forget. Have not names and sounds been given to things so that humans may find refreshment in them? It is a beautiful folly, speaking. With it, man dances over everything. How lovely is all speech and all the deceptions of sounds. Love dances with delight on variegated rainbows. His animals then said, "O Zarathustra, for those who think like us, everything dances by itself. Things come and extend their hands, they laugh, they flee, and then return. Everything goes, everything returns. The wheel of existence eternally rolls on. Everything dies, everything blooms anew. The year of existence eternally runs on. Everything breaks, everything is integrated anew. The same house of existence eternally builds itself. Everything separates, and everything greets each other again. The ring of existence remains eternally true to itself. Every moment, existence begins. The ball of here rolls around there. The center is everywhere. The path of eternity is crooked." To this, Zarathustra, The jester and the organ player replied with a smile, "You wags and barrel organs. You know well what had to be fulfilled in 7 days, and how that monster crept into my throat and choked me, but I bit off its head and spat it away from me. I fell down as one dead, and I remained long as one dead. When I again came to myself, I was pale and trembling, and I lay there for a long time without eating or drinking. This condition continued for 7 days, but my animals did not leave me day or night, except for the eagle, which flew forth to fetch food. And what it fetched and foraged, it laid on my couch, so that I was surrounded by fruits and other provisions. At my feet, 2 lambs were stretched out, which the eagle had with difficulty carried off from their shepherds. At last, after 7 days, I raised myself upon my couch, took a rosy apple in my hand, smelt it, and found its smell pleasant. Then my animals thought it was time to speak to me. "O Zarathustra," they said, "you have been lying here for 7 days with heavy eyes. Will you not set yourself upon your feet? Step out of your cave. The world is waiting for you like a garden. The wind plays with fragrances that seek you, and all brooks would like to run after you. Everything longs for you, as you have remained alone for 7 days. Step forth out of your cave. All things want to be your physicians. Did perhaps a new knowledge come to you, a bitter and grievous knowledge? Like leavened dough, your soul arose and swelled beyond all its bounds. I listened to my animals' words, and found comfort in hearing their voices. How charming it is to hear words and tones. To me, they are like rainbows and bridges between the eternally separated. Each soul belongs to another world, and to each soul, every other soul is a different world. Among the most alike, semblance deceives most delightfully, for the smallest gap is most difficult to bridge over. As for me, how could there be an outside of myself? There is no outside. But this fact is forgotten when hearing words and tones, and it refreshes me to forget. Words and tones are like rainbows and bridges between the eternally separated. My animals continued speaking, explaining that everything goes and returns, that the wheel of existence rolls eternally, and that all things separate and greet one another. They emphasized the idea that the middle is everywhere, and that existence follows an eternal cycle. I smiled at my animals' words and said, "You wags and barrel organs, you know well what had to be fulfilled in 7 days. That monster crept into my throat and choked me, but I bit off its head and spat it away from me." My animals advised me to go out into the world, to the roses, the bees, the doves, and especially the singing birds, to learn singing from them. They believed that singing was for the convalescent, while the sound ones could speak, and when even the sound ones desired songs, they should seek different songs than those of the convalescent. I chuckled and replied to my animals, "How well you know the consolation I devised for myself in 7 days. I must sing once more, and that is my consolation and my convalescence. Would you also like to make another song of it?" They advised me not to talk further, but to prepare a new lyre for myself. "For behold, O Zarathustra, for your new songs, new lyres are needed. Sing and overflow, O Zarathustra, heal your soul with new songs, so that you may bear your great destiny, which has not yet been anyone's destiny. For your animals know it well, O Zarathustra, who you are and must become. Behold, you are the teacher of the eternal return. This is now your destiny, that you must be the first to teach this doctrine. How could this great destiny not be your greatest danger and weakness? Behold, we know what you teach, that all things eternally return, and ourselves with them, and that we have already existed countless times, and all things with us. You teach that there is a great year of becoming, a prodigy of a great year. It must, like a sandglass, ever turn up anew, so that it may anew run down and run out, so that all those years are like one another in the greatest, and also in the smallest, so that we ourselves, in every great year, are like ourselves in the greatest, and also in the smallest. And if you were to die now, O Zarathustra, behold, we also know how you would speak to yourself then, but your animals beseech you not to die yet. You would speak, and without trembling, buoyant rather with bliss, for a great burden and worry would be lifted from you, you patient one. Now do I die and disappear, you would say, and in a moment I am nothing. Souls are as mortal as bodies, but the web of causes returns in which I am entangled. It will again create me. I myself belong to the causes of the eternal return. I come again with this sun, with this earth, with this eagle, with this serpent, not to a new life or a better life or a similar life. I come again eternally to this identical and self-same life in its greatest and its smallest, to teach again the eternal return of all things, to speak again the word of the great noon of earth and man, to announce again to man the Superman. I have spoken my word. I break down by my word. So wills my eternal fate, as a herald do I succumb. The hour has now come for the downgoer to bless himself. Thus Zarathustra's going down ends. When the animals had spoken these words, they fell silent and waited, expecting Zarathustra to respond. However, Zarathustra remained silent, lying with closed eyes as if he were sleeping, although he was not asleep. Instead, he was in communion with his own soul. Aware of the silence surrounding him, the eagle and the serpent cautiously pulled back.
The Convalescent marks a turning point in Zarathustra's journey, embodying a confrontation with despair and the acceptance of Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence. Zarathustra, having experienced a severe emotional and existential crisis, awakens in his cave with a terrifying cry, calling forth his deepest, most profound thoughts. This chapter symbolizes Zarathustra's struggle to reconcile his philosophy with the emotional toll it takes, a symbolic illness of the soul from which he must recover. The chapter opens with Zarathustra shouting, as if summoning something from the depths of his being. His awakening is not just physical, but represents a deeper realization, an encounter with his innermost self, or what Nietzsche calls the abysmal thought. This thought is eternal recurrence, the idea that every moment, every suffering, every joy, and every action will repeat infinitely in a cycle that cannot be broken. This realization brings Zarathustra both immense joy and a profound sense of disgust. Joy in affirming life fully, but disgust at the weight of such eternal repetition. Zarathustra collapses from the intensity of this revelation and remains in a death-like state for 7 days. His animals, the eagle and the serpent, serve as symbolic companions, representing his higher aspirations and his grounding wisdom. During this time, they nourish him and wait patiently for his recovery, providing comfort through their presence. Their role is not merely to care for him, but to act as reminders of his dual nature, the soaring will to power, eagle, and the serpentine wisdom that embraces life's cyclical nature. When Zarathustra finally awakens, his animals speak to him about the nature of existence. They emphasize the cyclical nature of life. Everything goes and returns, breaks and reunites in an endless pattern. This is Nietzsche's doctrine of eternal recurrence, where every event in life must be lived again and again, down to the smallest detail. Zarathustra listens and is comforted by their words, which present this eternal return not as a source of despair, but as a cosmic dance that brings beauty and harmony to existence. The animals encourage Zarathustra to embrace his destiny as the teacher of eternal recurrence. His recent suffering was a necessary initiation, preparing him for the burden of teaching a philosophy so radical and challenging. Zarathustra's animals suggest that his crisis was akin to a death and rebirth, an experience of biting off the head of a monster that choked him, symbolizing his battle with his own darkest thoughts. Zarathustra's acceptance of this doctrine transforms his attitude toward life. Though initially overcome by the weight of eternal recurrence, he emerges with a renewed resolve to live fully and joyfully, despite, or perhaps because of, the inevitability of repetition. His animals urge him to sing and celebrate life, for in singing, he heals and affirms his role as a prophet of this daunting yet exhilarating truth. The chapter's ending, where Zarathustra lies in silence, reflects his communion with himself and his philosophy. He is no longer just a man, but the embodiment of a principle, the eternal recurrence. In accepting this, Zarathustra transcends his previous limitations, preparing to embrace his fate and proclaim his message to humanity. Nietzsche's message is clear. True healing and self-overcoming require confronting the darkest truths within oneself and emerging with a radical affirmation of life, no matter how terrifying its reality may be.
Chapter 58. The Great Longing. O my soul, I have taught you to say today, as if it were once upon a time and formerly, and to dance your measure over every here, there, and yonder. I have delivered you from all by-places, brushed off the dust and spiders and twilight from you. I have washed away petty shame and the virtue of by-places from you, and I persuaded you to stand naked before the eyes of the sun. I blew over your surging sea with the storm called Spirit. I blew away all the clouds from it, and even strangled the strangler called Sin. O my soul, I gave you the right to say no like the storm, and to say yes as the open heaven says yes. You remain calm as the light, and now walk through denying storms. I restored to you liberty over the created and the uncreated, and who knows, as you know, the voluptuousness of the future. I taught you a contempt that does not come like worm-eating, a great, loving contempt that loves most where it contemns most. I taught you how to persuade, so that you even persuade the grounds themselves to you, like the sun that persuades the sea to rise. I have taken away all obedience, knee-bending, and homage from you. I have given you the names Change of Need and Fate. I have given you new names and colorful playthings. I called you Fate, and the Circuit of Circuits, and the Navel String of Time, and the Azure Bell. I gave you all wisdom to drink, all new wines, and also all immemorially old strong wines of wisdom. Every sun, night, silence, and longing I poured upon you. You grew for me like a vine, exuberant and heavy, with swelling udders and full clusters of golden grapes. You are filled and weighed down by your happiness, waiting from superabundance, yet ashamed of your waiting. O my soul, there is nowhere a soul more loving, comprehensive, and extensive than you. Where could future and past be closer together than with you? I have given you everything, and all my hands have become empty because of you. And now, what do you say to me, smiling and filled with melancholy? Which of us owes thanks? Does the giver not owe thanks because the receiver received? Is bestowing not a necessity? Is receiving not an act of pity? I understand the smile of your melancholy, O my soul. Your overabundance now stretches out longing hands. Your fullness looks out over raging seas, and seeks and waits. The longing of overfullness looks out from the smiling heaven of your eyes. And indeed, who could see your smiling and not melt into tears? Even the angels themselves melt into tears through the over-graciousness of your smiling. Your graciousness and over-graciousness are such that you will not complain and weep, yet your smiling now longs for tears, and your trembling mouth for sobs. Is not all weeping complaining, and all complaining accusing? Thus you speak to yourself, and therefore, O my soul, you would rather smile than pour forth your grief. You would rather smile than pour out your grief about your fullness, and the vines longing for the vintager and the vintage knife. But if you will not weep, if you will not pour forth your purple melancholy, then you will have to sing, O my soul, I can see it coming. You will have to sing with passionate song until all seas turn calm to listen to your longing. You will sing until the calm sea carries the ship, the golden marvel, around which all good, bad, and marvelous things dance. Many large and small animals, and everything with light, marvelous feet that can run on violet-blue paths, will follow the ship. They will all head toward the golden marvel, the spontaneous ship, and its master. He is the vintager who waits with the diamond vintage knife, your great deliverer, O my soul, the nameless one, for whom future songs will find names. And indeed, your breath already carries the fragrance of future songs. You are already glowing and dreaming. You are already drinking thirstily from all the deep echoing wells of consolation. Your melancholy is already resting in the bliss of future songs. O my soul, I have given you everything, and even my last possession, and all my hands have become empty because of you. And now you ask, which of us now owes thanks? But better yet, sing to me, sing, O my soul, and let me thank you. Thus spoke Zarathustra. In The Great Longing, Zarathustra engages in an introspective dialogue with his own soul, reflecting on the journey of spiritual liberation and transformation he has undergone. This chapter is an ode to the soul's growth and the complex relationship between creation, longing, and fulfillment. It symbolizes Nietzsche's vision of human potential and the struggle to transcend one's limitations in the quest for ultimate freedom and self-expression. Zarathustra begins by recounting how he has freed his soul from the constraints of conventional morality and societal expectations. He describes purging it of dust and spiders, ridding it of the trivialities and guilt associated with common virtues. By stripping away this twilight of mediocrity, he has made his soul naked and exposed to the sun,
symbolizing a pure and unencumbered state. Through this process, Zarathustra has taught his soul to say yes and no with the same power as the open sky and storms, reflecting a newfound mastery over itself and its surroundings. The core theme of this chapter is the tension between fullness and longing. Zarathustra's soul, having absorbed all his wisdom and strength, now overflows with abundance. It is compared to a vine heavy with ripe grapes, filled with vitality, yet longing for a harvester to complete its purpose. This fullness leads to a paradox. The soul is both rich and impoverished, weighed down by its own abundance, yet yearning for release, expression, and transformation. Zarathustra acknowledges this yearning, but distinguishes it from weakness. Unlike ordinary longing, this great longing does not stem from lack or desire, but from an overflow of life and potential. The soul, filled to the brim, seeks to give itself away, to sing, to create, to express its deepest essence. This longing is not a lament, but a call for transcendence, a desire to reach beyond oneself and be reborn in a higher form. The chapter also touches on the theme of gratitude and reciprocity between creator and creation. Zarathustra's soul asks, "Which of us owes thanks?" suggesting a reversal of roles between giver and receiver. The soul, filled with the gifts of wisdom and freedom Zarathustra has bestowed, now longs to return the favor, to give back through expression and creation. This dynamic reflects Nietzsche's belief that true creation is a reciprocal process, where the creator is also transformed by what he creates. Zarathustra anticipates that his soul will eventually sing, as its longing cannot be contained. This song, described as one that will calm the seas and attract all beings, represents the soul's ultimate act of liberation. It will call forth a mysterious figure, the vintager with his diamond knife, symbolizing the one who will harvest the soul's fruits and bring it to its final form. This vintager, unnamed and awaited, is the force of destiny, the culmination of the soul's journey towards self-fulfillment. In essence, the great longing is about the soul's yearning to transcend its own fullness and express its potential through creation and transformation. It encapsulates Nietzsche's idea that true strength and freedom arise not from renouncing one's desires, but from embracing and channeling them into acts of profound creativity and affirmation. Zarathustra's soul, like a vine heavy with fruit, must sing or burst. It is this pressure of overabundance, this great longing, that propels it toward its highest expression. Through this chapter, Nietzsche affirms that the greatest creations come not from need or emptiness, but from the overflow of a spirit that is rich, full, and yearning to transcend itself. Chapter 59, The Second Dance Song, Zarathustra's Dance with Life, a poetic encounter of attraction and challenge. Zarathustra's encounter with life, represented as a playful and elusive figure, is described in a poetic and vivid manner. He sees golden gleams in life's eyes and envisions a golden boat on dark waters, a symbol of fleeting beauty and pleasure. Life gazes at Zarathustra's dancing feet, and with a glance, she ignites a dance frenzy within him. Zarathustra's feet respond to life's invitation, and his toes seem to listen and dance with wild enthusiasm. Life's presence is alluring, and Zarathustra is drawn to her despite the sense of fear and uncertainty she evokes. Their interaction is a dance of attraction and repulsion. Life tempts him with her flight and playfulness, and Zarathustra is willing to endure suffering for her sake. He acknowledges the dual nature of life, both enticing and challenging. As they dance together, life's crooked glances teach Zarathustra unconventional paths, and his feet follow her crafty suggestions. He expresses a complex mix of emotions, fear, love, and longing for life, who is both a temptress and an innocent. Life's actions are unpredictable, and she alternates between drawing near and fleeing. Zarathustra follows her with determination, even when it leads him into uncertainty and danger. He uses metaphors of bats, owls, and playful teasing to describe life's capricious nature. She is a temptress
who provokes him with her charms and challenges. In his pursuit of life, Zarathustra stumbles and falls, yet he is willing to endure the difficulties of the chase. He implores her to take his hand, or even just a finger, indicating his desire for a closer connection. As they navigate through caves and thickets, Zarathustra's pursuit of life becomes more challenging. He humorously compares her to a bat and an owl, and playfully accuses her of leading him astray. Life's actions become more provocative, with references to her biting and her enticing gaze. Zarathustra finds himself enchanted by her despite her mischievous behavior. The dance takes them over challenging terrain, and Zarathustra embraces the role of the hunter with life as his quarry. He experiences both the exhilaration and the hardships of the chase. As Zarathustra falls, he pleads with life for mercy and longs for a more tranquil and beautiful place. He suggests paths of love and idyllic landscapes, but life continues to test and challenge him. Despite his weariness, Zarathustra offers to carry life and quench her thirst, but she remains elusive and doesn't drink. He playfully calls her a nimble, supple serpent and expresses frustration with her teasing ways. In the end, Zarathustra decides to take control of the situation. He asserts his dominance by suggesting that life should cry out to him to the rhythm of his whip, reversing their roles in the dance. This poetic passage captures the complex and dynamic relationship between Zarathustra and life, filled with attraction, challenge, and a sense of playful defiance. Life's response to Zarathustra, the complex dynamics of love and wisdom. Life responded to me in this manner, closing her delicate ears to my harsh words. "O Zarathustra, don't crack your whip so terribly. You surely know that noise kills thought, and right now, delicate thoughts have come to me. We are both genuine ne'er-do-wells and ne'er-do-ills. We found our island and our green meadow beyond good and evil, just the two of us. Therefore, we must be friendly to each other. Even if we don't love each other with all our hearts, must we hold a grudge against each other if our love is not perfect? I am friendly to you, perhaps even too friendly, because I envy your wisdom. Ah, this crazy old fool wisdom. If your wisdom were to leave you one day, my love for you would leave just as quickly." Then Life looked around thoughtfully and said softly, "O Zarathustra, you are not faithful enough to me. You don't love me nearly as much as you claim. I know you are thinking of leaving me soon. There is an old, heavy, booming clock that strikes the hours at midnight, and its sound reaches your cave. When you hear that clock strike between 1 and 12, you think about leaving me. You know that, Zarathustra." I hesitated for a moment and replied, "Yes, but you also know." I whispered something into her ear, amidst her tangled yellow foolish tresses. "You know that, O Zarathustra, no one knows that." And we looked into each other's eyes, gazing at the green meadow where the cool evening was passing. We wept together. At that moment, life became dearer to me than all my wisdom had ever been. The Midnight Voice, Zarathustra's revelation of deep truths. 1. Oh man, pay attention. 2. What does the voice of deep midnight truly say? 3. I slept my sleep. 4. From the deepest dream I've awakened and say. 5. The world is deep. 6. And deeper than the day can perceive. 7. Deep is its sorrow. 8. Joy, deeper still than grief can be. 9. Sorrow says, away. 10. But joys all crave eternity. 11. They long for deep, profound eternity. 12. In this chapter, Zarathustra's encounter with life takes the form of a vivid, symbolic dance that explores the intricate dynamics of their relationship. Life is personified as a playful, seductive figure who simultaneously attracts and challenges Zarathustra. Their interaction is portrayed as a dance of attraction and repulsion, with Zarathustra expressing a complicated mix of emotions, love, fear, and longing. The dance symbolizes the complex interplay between human will and the unpredictability of life itself, reflecting Nietzsche's belief that life is inherently chaotic, full of temptations and contradictions. As Zarathustra follows life's lead, he experiences both joy and frustration. Her elusiveness and teasing make his pursuit a test of endurance and desire. He stumbles and falls, yet remains captivated, willing to endure the difficulties of chasing something so alluring. Life's unpredictable nature is described through animalistic metaphors. She's like a bat or a serpent, highlighting her mischievous and sometimes cruel demeanor.
This unpredictability forces Zarathustra to embrace the uncertainty of the chase and adapt to life's whims, illustrating Nietzsche's philosophy that one must dance with life's chaos rather than resist it. The turning point comes when Zarathustra, exhausted from the chase, tries to assert control, suggesting that life should follow his rhythm and obey his commands. This moment marks a shift from passive pursuit to an attempt to dominate and direct the chaotic forces of existence. Yet, even in this, Zarathustra's assertiveness is playful, suggesting that mastery over life is not about suppression, but about embracing its unpredictability with grace and confidence. When life responds to Zarathustra, she exposes the fragility and transience of their bond. She envies his wisdom, but also accuses him of being unfaithful to her, hinting at his tendency to detach from life's immediacy in favor of lofty thoughts and ideals. Her complaint about Zarathustra thinking of leaving her is a metaphor for his philosophical struggle. He seeks to transcend the mundane aspects of life, yet life pulls him back, reminding him that true wisdom requires staying engaged with existence, no matter how chaotic. The chapter's climax is the midnight voice, which serves as a revelation of deeper truths. The rhythmic counting to 12 signifies the passage of time and the inevitable return of eternal themes, sorrow, joy, and the longing for eternity. The voice proclaims that joy is deeper than sorrow, suggesting that despite all of life's hardships, its greatest value is in its capacity for joy, a joy that yearns for eternal recurrence. Zarathustra's weeping with life at the end shows his acceptance of this paradox. Life, with all its unpredictability, suffering, and fleeting pleasures, becomes dearer to him than wisdom itself. This chapter, therefore, captures the essence of Nietzsche's philosophy. The dance with life is not about conquering or fleeing from it, but about embracing its full range, pleasure and pain, attraction and repulsion, mastery and surrender. True wisdom, as Zarathustra realizes, lies not in detachment from life's dance, but in participating fully, allowing oneself to be both the dancer and the danced.
Chapter 60.
The Seven Seals, or the Yes and Amen Song.
The Seven Seals, a passionate call to eternity's embrace. If I possess the gift of foresight, and am filled with the spirit of divination that roams high mountain ridges, between two seas, wandering between the past and the future like a heavy cloud, opposed to hot plains, and to all that is wearisome, and neither capable of dying nor living, ready for lightning in its dark bosom, and for the liberating flash of light, charged with lightning bolts that say, yes, and laugh, yes, ready for prophetic flashes of lightning. Blessed, however, is the one who is thus charged. And indeed, he must hang like a heavy storm on the mountain for a long time, he who will one day ignite the light of the future. Oh, how could I not be passionate about eternity and about the supreme marriage ring, the ring of return? I have never yet found the woman with whom I would like to have children, unless it is this woman whom I love. For I love you, O eternity. For I love you, O eternity. 2. The creative spark, a love letter to eternity. If ever my anger has disrupted the past, moved boundaries, or cast aside old beliefs like shattered tables into deep chasms, if ever my contempt has scattered decayed words to the winds, and I've come like a broom to sweep away cobwebs, and as a refreshing breeze to old, decaying places, if ever I've sat in joyous reverence where old gods are buried, blessing the world, and showing love for the world, beside the memorials of those who once opposed the world, even churches and the graves of gods I cherish, as long as the heavens peer through their dilapidated roofs with pure eyes. I gladly sit like grass and vibrant flowers on abandoned churches. Oh, how could I not be passionate about eternity and the ultimate union, the ring of all rings, the ring of return? I have never found the woman with whom I would want to have children, except it be this woman whom I love. For I love you, O eternity. For I love you, O eternity. 3. Cosmic choreography. Eternity's marriage ring beckons. If ever a breath hath come to me of the creative breath, and of the heavenly necessity which compelleth even chances to dance star dances, if ever I have laughed with the laughter of the creative lightning, to which the long thunder of the deed followeth, grumblingly, but obediently, if ever I have played dice with the gods at the divine table of the earth, so that the earth quaked and ruptured, and snorted forth fire streams. For a divine table is the earth, and trembling with new creative dictums and dice-casts of the gods. Oh, how could I not be ardent for eternity, and for the marriage ring of rings, the ring of the return? Never yet have I found the woman by whom I should like to have children, unless it be this woman whom I love. For I love thee, O eternity, for I love thee, O eternity. Eruption of creativity, yearning for eternity's union. If ever I have felt the creative spark within me, like a heavenly force that compels even random events to dance in a cosmic choreography, if ever I have laughed with the kind of laughter that follows the creative burst of lightning, where the thunderous execution of deeds obediently follows, albeit grumblingly, if ever I have engaged in a game of chance with the gods at the sacred table of the earth, causing the earth to tremble and release fiery eruptions, for the earth is a divine table, quivering with new creative decrees and divine gambles. Oh, how could I not be passionate about eternity and the ultimate union, the ring of return? I have never encountered a woman with whom I desired to have children, except for the one I love. For I love you, O eternity. For I love you, O eternity. Sailor's delight, a sea of passion for eternity. If I have a fondness for the sea and everything related to it, especially when it challenges me with its anger, if I have the excitement of exploration in me, driving me towards the unknown, if the thrill of a seafarer is in my delight, if my joy has ever exclaimed, the shore has disappeared, and the last chain has fallen from me, the boundless world roars around me, and far away, space and time sparkle for me, well, cheer up, old heart. Oh, how could I not be passionate about eternity and the ultimate union, the ring of rings, the ring of return? I have never met a woman with whom I would like to have children, except it be this woman whom I love. For I love you, O eternity, for I love you, O eternity. Dancer's virtue, pursuing eternity's ultimate goal. If my virtue is like that of a dancer, and I have often leaped with both feet into the joy of golden emerald rapture, if my wickedness is a playful wickedness, at home among rose gardens and fields of lilies, because in laughter all evil is present, but it is purified and forgiven by its own bliss. And if my ultimate goal is that everything heavy should become light, every body a dancer, and every spirit a bird. Indeed, that is my ultimate goal. Oh, how could I not be passionate about eternity and the supreme union, the ring of rings, the ring of return? I have never found the woman with whom I would want to have children, except it be this woman whom I love. For I love you, O eternity, for I love you, O eternity, soaring into heaven, embracing the ring of return with eternity. If ever I have created a serene heaven above me, and have soared into my own heaven with my own wings, if I have joyfully swum in the deep, luminous distances, and if the wisdom of my freedom like a bird has come to me, but this is how avian wisdom speaks. Behold, there is no above and no below. Dive, soar, move in all directions, you radiant one. Sing, speak no more. Are not all words meant for the heavy? Do not all words deceive the light ones? Sing, speak no more. Oh, how could I not be passionate about eternity and the supreme union, the ring of rings, the ring of return? I have never found the woman with whom I would want to have children, except it be this woman whom I love. For I love you, O eternity, for I love you, O eternity. This chapter serves as a triumphant and poetic conclusion to Thus Spoke Zarathustra Part 3. The 7 seals are not literal, but metaphorical, representing 7 declarations of love and affirmation for life, creation, and Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence. Each seal is an expression of Zarathustra's complete embrace of existence, its joys, sorrows, and contradictions, all unified in the unbreakable circle of the eternal return. The repeated motif of "I love you, O eternity," throughout the chapter is a passionate refrain that highlights Zarathustra's ecstatic acceptance of existence in its entirety. Nietzsche uses the metaphor of a marriage ring to symbolize this eternal bond with life, just as a marriage ring signifies an unending union. The eternal recurrence is the ultimate form of commitment to existence itself, a willingness to live each moment, with all its pain and beauty, infinitely. Each stanza reflects a different dimension of this love and affirmation. Zarathustra celebrates the creative power of destruction and renewal, the joy of laughter even amidst suffering, the freedom found in embracing the unknown, and the goal of transforming heaviness into lightness. He rejects mere survival and demands a life that is vivid, passionate, and dynamic.
This yearning culminates in a vision where he soars into his own heaven, unbound by limitations, singing rather than speaking, as words themselves become inadequate to express the depth of his joy. The recurring theme of Zarathustra, not finding the woman with whom he would want children, save for eternity, underscores that his love is not for a person, but for life itself. This woman, eternity, is both lover and companion, representing the supreme object of his devotion. The imagery of rings, marriage, and creation suggests a sacred union between the individual and the infinite cycles of time. Ultimately, the Seven Seals is a hymn of affirmation and love, a resounding yes to existence, where every element of life, even its hardships, is embraced as necessary and beautiful. Nietzsche's celebration of the eternal return is not merely acceptance, but an enthusiastic embrace of life's endless repetition. The chapter concludes Zarathustra's journey with an exultant declaration. True wisdom and freedom are found only in the unreserved affirmation of all that is, was, and ever will be. That's it for this time. See you in the next video. In the meantime, check out my other videos.